They say the next big thing is here, that the revolution's near. But to me it seems quite clear that it's all just a little bit of history repeating.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Magical Mystery Church Multi-Feature. This week, I am putting up 5 videos that all have elements of, let's say, the Christian right and the Nazi underground connections. Because I am starting a series about the New Age and Gnostic connections to Nazism or anti-Semitism. And I know that's a big topic. People have a lot of strong opinions on either side. I'm just saying that in the videos I've made and research I've done, I keep coming across this Nazi influence in religion and politics on the right. So first we have a video that is called Sir Lancelot and Brother Steve. This is where Lance is promoting Steve Bannon, who's promoting Dugin, who's promoting other far-right philosophers and extremists. Then we have the Christ-hating devils, Sasha Stone and Scott McKay, who are very patriotic and Gnostic and anti-Semitic. And then we have the Prayer Vigil for America with Sean Foyt, the Angelus Temple, and the history where they also had some like Nazi type preachers there back in the early days. And here we have Rick Joyner and Paul Cain, who are visiting Hitler's archives and stuff like that. And the last one is the Unholy Alliance Part 3, which is about the Christian right and the Nazi underground. And so anyway, I just thought I would put these together. These are just a few examples, and there's a lot more examples, but these are the kind of things that I've been coming across. And now we're here in 2025, and we're seeing a lot of information from all sides, right? But this is what I've been seeing, and I just think it's important to be aware. And also to remember, like, I will just say that as a premillennial believer, I believe that Jesus is coming in the future. I think there is a future situation coming against Israel, and I just think it's interesting that right now we're just seeing so much... so many examples of people, even just like the craziest extremes like Kanye West or somebody, but they're just out there saying some of these things. So anyway, I hope that you enjoy this, and thank you for watching or listening. So this video is a follow-up to the one that I did a few months ago about Lance Wallnau promoting Steve Bannon, promoting Alexander Dugin, promoting Aleister Crowley. Kind of like a one thing leads to another. And just the other day, Steve Montgomery, who wrote the book about the converging apostasy, which I have covered in a few videos, he sent me a chapter from his book that related to that. So I thought, well, I'll just do like a little update. And so this video, I'm going to show you a little bit of the previous video that I'm talking about, a couple minutes of that, and it's mostly me reading. It's very interesting because it's a lot of more interesting information about Gnosticism and Otzi Nay, Hitler Hey, ultra right kind of stuff. And, I never knew about any of this before. I thought I was on the right side and everything was cool. And then I started finding out that, guess what? We see a lot of very dark occult weirdness in Hollywood and the music industry and all that. Well, guess what? There's a right angle of that too. So that's why I'm making this video, because I just wanted to show that the in the NAR and all the other things that I talk about, they're really blending politics and religion together, just like the New Age does. And if you're a Christian, a conservative, I'm just saying that there is a dark side to that. And a couple years ago, I actually was following some letter after P groups on, on social media and stuff. And I started noticing, wow, there's so much new agey comments underneath, right? And I was also seeing so many pro Putin memes and stuff. So this is going back like 4 or 5 years. And I want to really say a big thank you to Stephen Montgomery. And you should also check out the latest podcast or YouTube video with him and John Collins from Leaving the Message. They did a really great video today, which also connects all these things together. So, thanks for watching. 2 more things. The word otsine in Pig Latin was used frequently. I had to cut my words out a little bit. And there is some very adult themes, so this is not for children.
The Tale of Sir Lancelot.
The Lance Wallnau Show is coming at you live from the Master himself.
From the Master himself. From the Master himself.
With a special broadcast taken from one of Lance's most recent appearances. Tune in and get ready for some major revelation.
I pray you take the smell of smoke, the disappointment, the bitterness, the anger, the feeling of betrayal and loss. That it must be a terrible thing, Lord, to actually feel as though you've been stolen an election and that the nation that you love is suffering with it. I pray, Lord, that you'll take the smoke away, but you'll give him a revelation that he is nothing but an instrument of yours, and that as an instrument, you have your hand on him. Seeing something great happen with the fellow whose show is right before mine on Saturday, Steve Bannon. I see God doing a work in him. I want you guys to pray for Brother Steve, for Brother Steve, for Brother Steve. This guy's like, I mean, he was probably called to be an apostle. I mean, everything that he does, he's a command center, but he's got an apostolic grace on him.
Okay, so here we have Lance Wallnau with Steve Bannon taking over the show. And then we have the connection between Steve Bannon and Alexander Dugin. And here's Alexander Dugin with his chaos magic symbol in the background.
Ahead, Mr. Trump. In Trump we trust.
And then you'll see there's a connection between Alexander Dugin and Aleister Crowley with his chaos magic stuff. And then, of course, you have Lance Wallnau with God's Chaos Code and God's Chaos Candidate.
So coming out of this dream, once the shaman told me that actually the best thing happened in this planet right now is the Trump to be the president. I said, how is this possible? It's the best thing to happen. He said, yes, because he's so irrational, he's so crazy. That's actually create that awakening, that we finally wake up. Because before it will be another guy and everything looks similar, but he's so different than anything else. So he's the magician who waking us up. What do you think about that? That kind of theory.
We're crazy. We're crazy. We're crazy. People that are contemporary thought leaders that are actually going to be coming into our environment. Many of them are Christian, but I'm calling in a lot of the Catholic leaders that I believe really fear God, and I want to see them all get filled with the Holy Spirit. I think Steve Bannon should speak in tongues. And so with that thought in mind, I think the whole Trump family should be charismatic, come to think of it. All of them should be. Doesn't get involved. We lose elections by 10,000, 5,000, 8,000 people voting. Like I said, 82% of evangelicals showed up. So the message to Washington is, poor Bannon. Let me give a word to Steve Bannon. Steve Reno, don't you be discouraged. Don't you be discouraged, Steve. He wasn't crazy about Roy Moore after he found out about, the sex allegations.
But I'm a creep.
I mean, it was frustrating. He wanted to make a point to Donald Trump that populism is the way to go. Be true to your roots. Don't get caught up in, negotiating with the establishment. We're going to take on that establishment this year before 2018. They're going to feel the heat, people. Yes, they are. Steve Reno, don't be discouraged. Do your meditation stuff.
Do your meditation stuff.
Stay in the vein you're in, kind of channeling your inner peace, man. We're going to be praying for you. We pray for Steve tonight, Lord. Just cover his head in grace and peace and give him consolation and insight and understanding. We're going to pull together because he still is storming the barricades of the establishment status quo. The truth is, if the establishment hadn't beat so hard on Roy, I'm talking about the Republicans. Because after all, we represent 25 million of us out there. We're not always organized. We're not always coherently motivated. But once we get our crosshairs fixed, bam, when we show up, watch out. When we show up, watch out.
A thematic critique of the teachings of Alexander Dugin. Influences. Dugin calls himself, number one, a traditionalist who is in favor of antiquity and against modernity. And number two, a follower of Vladimir Solovyov and Julius Evola. As an influential, mystically inclined, persuasive power behind the throne, he has been referred to as President Vladimir Putin's Rasputin. In addition, Robert Zerbin's Dugin's Evil Theology in the National Review, June 14, 2014, states that Dugin was involved in proto-Nazi mystical circles and Thule Society-like organizations in the 1980s. To place this in context of the themes of the converging apostasy, the Thule Society, named after a mythical northern country in Greek legend, concerned itself with the origins of the Aryan race. They identified Ultima Thule as an ancient lost landmass in the extreme north, which is said by non-mystics to be the capital of the ancient mythical Hyperborea. Yes, it's true. Nazism is rife with many esoterically based, undeniable insanities beyond those that are more widely known. In Search of the Dark Logos, Philosophico-Theological Outlines by Dugin, 2013, the chapter titles themselves give us some insight into the kinds of esoteric topics that drive his thinking. For example, they include some of the major players of the converging apostasy, such as can be seen in Chapter 9, The Challenge of Valentinus, Chapter 12, Kabbalah and Neoplatonism, in Chapter 13, Traditionalism as a Theory, Sophia and Plato. In Chapter 13, Dugin tells us that the traditionalist movement of René Guénon and others like Julius Evola believed, as did Helena Blavatsky, that there is basic universal truth present in all religions, and that these universal truths, number one, elevate the figure of Sophia, and two, promote a primordial theology which can be boiled down to Platonism and Neoplatonism. Elsewhere, we learn that for Dugin, Platonism was the universal wisdom. Dugin rightly asserts that we can trace the line of what he calls the dark logos through the mystics of occultism, Kabbalah, Neoplatonists, and Satanists like Eliphas Levi. As a reminder, it was Levi who first depicted the devil as the goat-man-woman Baphomet, ubiquitous and Satanist-oriented occultism, and two, influenced Blavatsky's positive views about Satan and fallen angels. Under the subheading, The Dark Logos of Neoplatonism, Dugin says that Neoplatonism contains the main ideas of Plato in a synthesis with other Hellenistic and Middle Eastern religious and mystical systems. Likewise, he asserts that the thread of the Dark Logos can be found in Kabbalah, alchemy, the teachings of the Gnostic sects, and the millenarian doctrines of the three kingdoms espoused by Joachim of Fior. As is stated elsewhere, the three kingdoms of Joachim of Fior are similar to the Gnostic Valentinus conception of three levels of spirituality, the third being the perfection of union with one's personal angel, are comparable to the manifest sons of God teachings about the three levels of salvation, the third being divine manifested sonship. And I'm sorry, I wasn't counting. Number three, echo the third spiritual initiation of Alice Bailey to some degree, and four are the historical basis for the Third Reich. Taking dominion, the sacred purge, and angels. In Dugin's Evil Theology, published in the National Review, June 14th, 2014, Robert Zerbin quotes, "The American Empire should be destroyed." Alexander Dugin and the Perils of Immanentized Eschatology by James Heiser. As is mentioned elsewhere, to immanentize is to attempt to bring about the utopian conditions of the kingdom/New Age through human efforts. According to Heiser, Dugin sees the entire history of the world as a continuous battle between two factions, Russia and Eurasianism, versus Russia and Eurasianism versus the Atlantic Order of the West. The West is exemplified, of no surprise, by the United States. Accordingly, Dugin bluntly states that the American empire should be destroyed. This, of course, is not a great idea to have, considering the fact that Dugin acts as an influencer of Vladimir Putin. With his mental state and the stockpile of nuclear weapons at their fingertips, war with Dugin and his mouthpiece Putin poses the possibility of an unwinnable war. Pause. I would just like to say I have seen for years a lot of people who really like Donald Trump also really think Putin is cool because he says things that sound like a conservative is saying about morality or stuff like that, or that he's against the alphabet people. And so Christians think, oh, he's one of us. He's on our side. Nope. Heiser tells us that Dugin's eschatological view is a dualistic form of Gnosticism, expressing a battleground of the forces of good and evil, in which he sees the West as the realm of Antichrist. Heiser says that Dugin's fusion of traditionalism and Eurasianism has become a Gnostic mass movement and an activist mysticism. To explain this form of activism in the fourth political theory, Dugin lets his readers know something that, number one, Alice Bailey influenced New Agers with hands-on eschatology, and number two, Jane Lead influenced Manifest Sons of God believers both affirm. For example, he tells those under his influence that their involvement is required to bring in the kingdom. The end times and the eschatological meaning of politics will not realize themselves on their own. Wow. In his version of hands-on eschatology, Dugin connects the themes of taking dominion, the sacred purge, deification based on the big lie, and angels. For example, in the Metaphysics of National Bolshevism, he says that this greatest revolution of history, a universal one, will include the angel's return and the hero's resurrection. What? In addition, sounding something like a Valentinian text and Russian President Putin, Dugin says that the Russian people will cause the end of the world, since death is the way to immortality. Mo Bedard, aka Mo, and self-proclaimed expert in Gnosticism, the occult, and esotericism, posted an article about Dugin at GnosticWarrior.com, which sheds more light on Dugin via Putin's path toward omnicide, world destruction. In relation to the nature and direction of this path, Bedard refers to Dugin as Putin's left-hand Gnostic man, who separates the wheat from the tares. Bedard, like Alice Bailey and Savitri Devi, and strangely similar to Jane Lead-inspired Manifest Sons of God teacher J. Preston Eby, does not refer to Hitler as an evil man. Instead, he says that Hitler was an example of one who became overwhelmed by a deeper, more ancient, more absolute aspiration in the Gnostic spirit. He was, in essence, filled with the secret and terrible light of the left-hand path. Is this what we are dealing with when attempting to enact foreign policy with Russia? If so, this deeper and more terrible left-hand path is illuminated via Valentinus, via Kabbalah, via Solovyov, via Dugin, via Putin. Anti-Semitism and race and the sacred purge. Speaking in typical neo-tropes, Dugin says that the flame of Hyperborea will transform geopolitical reality into a new global ideology, like those influenced by the precedents Jane Lead set for hands-on eschatology. This new reality will bring the final restoration, but not in the way that globalist spokesman have theorized. According to Dugin, globalist spokesmen are predominantly to be found in the West, the USA in particular, and are identified as the Antichrist, people from the Bible land, people from the Holy Land. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to use that. That's my code word. Who control international banking. Okay? Wow. In the chapter titled Alexander Dugin Between Eschatology, Esotericism, and Conspiracy Theory in the Handbook of Conspiracy Theory and Contemporary Religion, Victor Schnirelman explains Dugin's position further. For example, Schnirelman says that Dugin joins the long list of those who vilify the Holy Land people as a corollary to their esoteric-based worldview. Dugin does this in his writings about the world plot of the eternal enemy, which he relates to the narrative of the Antichrist. This mindset is preoccupied with conspiratorial anti-Semitism, where history unfolds as an eternal occult war between true Christianity and Judaism, intimating the sacred purge and the coming of a world leader considered to be the Christ, according to Dugin. This version of the end will ultimately give way to, number one, the final victory of the sacred avatar, i.e., a Christ-like world leader, and two, the coming of the great judgment. The Devil Reborn. On page 11 and 12 of Dugin's Search of the Dark Logos, Philosophico-Theological Outlines, 2013, under the subtitle of The New Gnosis, we learn more about the Dark Logos, aka Chaos. Pause. Like the Chaos Candidate by Lance Wallnau. Just saying. For example, the Dark Logos is said to be like the invisible sun that Blavatsky spoke of, and which Kabbalistic theosophers refer to as the black light. This takes on greater significance on page 17, where it is said that the root meaning of the Sanskrit swastika is symbolized by the black sun, and as the Valentinian Gnostic womb of potentiality associated with Valentinus, Lucifer like Sophia. As always, symbolic metaphor meets metaphor to convey literal meaning which can translate into actions and should matter to traditional Orthodox Christians. In Heiser's The American Empire Should Be Destroyed, Alexander Dugin and the Perils of Immanentized Eschatology, we learn more about Dugin's esoteric-friendly interpretation of the word chaos. For example, Heiser comments on Dugin's worship of chaos and his adoption of the occult symbol of the eight-pointed star of chaos as the emblem of the Eurasianist movement. He tells us that for Dugin, the Logos, which is associated with Christ in biblical tradition, is replaced by chaos. This means that Dugin's invocation of chaos over and against Logos leads to certain inevitable conclusions. Given the context of his background and his current doctrines, Heiser unequivocally states that Dugin's Eurasianism is a satanic cult. What does this imply about Putin? Interestingly, in the previously referenced article about Dugin posted by Mo Bedard on the Gnostic Warrior website, we are told that there are two types of spirituality, the right-hand path and the left-hand path. It is further said that the left-hand path that Dugin follows is more difficult, but it is the only true path to glory and immortality, the only path that allows one to conquer. As is often the case, as we see in this quest for glory and immortality, the stench of the devil reborn is regularly followed by the nausea that comes with his offer of deification based on the big lie. For those fallen seekers on this left-hand path, we are told that the prison of substance will collapse and be transformed into a celestial city, which is the moment of the end, when there will be a triumph of total liberation. Here again we see that the liberation of the converging apostasy is associated with sacred purge, sacred suicide, death, destruction, and the devil reborn. The multifaceted goddess and the devil reborn. At the Gnostic Warrior, Mo tells us that as Putin's Russian Gnostic Dugin uncovers the mystery of Sophia and her struggle against the malicious demiurge, in Gnosticism, the demiurge would actually be Jehovah in the Bible. God, the Father God, the one that created the world, that is their demiurge. Just in case anybody didn't know that. As an angel of the sacred purge, he embodies the sacred berserk passion to total destruction of all that is black for the sake of finding new, unearthly light. By recognizing and uncovering him, Dugin connects the mysteries of Valentinus, fallen, Lucifer-like Sophia, with what Bedard calls the left-hand path. And by way of this connection, Dugin identifies himself as a follower of this road to immortality and liberation from God, the Creator. In his Pneumachia, the three logi, Apollo, Dionysus, and Cybele, I can't remember.
Cybele.
Dugin continues with a devil-centric chaos, i.e. the dark logos, as opposed to the Christocentric logos. Fittingly, this text is referred to as a continuation of another book, In Search of the Dark Logos. Furthermore, we are told that the logos of the Great Mother Cybele, as with the Lucifer-like Sophia, is a hidden black logos. To put Cybele in her proper context, in the converging apostasy, she was the ancient Phrygian mother of the gods. She was considered to be a nature goddess, worshipped with orgiastic rites. Her ecstatic cults reputedly met exclusively at night, expressing themselves with music, especially drumming, consuming hallucinogenic plants, and fervorous dancing. Dugin shows more connections with the dark logos, the left-hand path, and the multifaceted goddess who is Cybele, who is Sophia, who is legions of others. For example, chapter 6 is titled Valentinus the Gnostic, Sophia and the Structures of the Feminine Logos. It should be clear that according to Orthodox biblically based Christianity, this shape-shifting Lucifer-like Sophia of the Gnostic Valentinus is by no means divine. In Search of the Dark Logos, Dugin tells us that it was from this eternal Sophia that the Europeans of modernity acquired their mandate to conquer the world, as the bearers of higher universal knowledge. Interestingly, this quest for conquest is mirrored in Jane Leeds' comments about Sophia's divine inspiration for the colonizing role to be played by England. Dugin asks rhetorically if perennialism, traditionalism, universalism, and the true Sophia began with Plato's theory. He answers this question by saying that traditionalists see Plato as the link in the golden chain of initiates which stretches back to the dawn of creation, to the earthly paradise, and to Sophia, the secret bride of humanity in search of divinity. Dugin then asks a two-part question. How can we relate the fact of the Kali Yuga, which he defines as our God-forsaken now, with our understanding of Sophia as the angel initiator, and two, the knowledge of man as divine being? He answers his question saying that the Gnostics offered a dualistic answer, which according to him seems to be the only one acceptable. In other words, Dugin acknowledges that the world is indeed broken, but for him the fix comes with the unholy union of the Lucifer-like Sophia and fallen humanity. A thematic critique of the teachings of Savitri Devi. Background. In Hindu Mysticism and the Alt-Right by David Lawrence, 2018, we learn that Maximiani Portis changed her name to Savitri Devi in the honor of the Indo-Aryan goddess. Lawrence tells us that Devi's materials are freely available on multiple alt-right sites, such as the Daily Stormer, where we learn about the myths of a utopian and racially pure lost civilization and whiteness as the indicator of divine origins. These sorts of themes provide motivation for adherents to recapture what they believe belongs to them. Lawrence points out that Devi has influenced neo-Nazism, occultism, the New Age movement, and the alt-right. We learn that Devi's views are reaching a wider public through alt-right leaders such as Richard Spencer and Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, Brother Steve, you know, the apostle that That guy that Lance Wallnau was talking about? Okay, Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist and chair of Breitbart News. As a reminder, it is Bannon who has favorably cited the works of Julius Evola, the Italian mystical fascist and advisor to Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. Alexander Dugin, the neo-Gnostic fascist and advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin, also sings the praises of Evola. Sounds like Ebola. Maybe I should call him Ebola. For more on the significance of Evola and Dugin, refer to my critiques of their teachings, connections, and influences. Fittingly, white nationalist Spencer of the National Policy Institute has jokingly deified Trump as the incarnation of Kalki. He has also invoked Savitri Devi in a speech by saying, like her, that white people are the children of the sun. Anti-Semitism and race. Significantly, Lawrence goes on to say that Devi was a proponent of a synthesis of Hinduism and Nazism, proclaiming that Adolf Hitler was sent by Providence. According to Devi, Hitler made a sacrifice for humanity in order to lead to the end of the Dark Age, i.e. the Kali Yuga, under the reign of the Bibleland people, and usher in a golden age. In her, The Lightning and the Sun, Devi records that Hitler prophesied in 1928 of the new order, saying of himself, "I am not he, but while nobody comes forward to prepare the way for him, I do so." Is this applicable for America today? That's a really good question. The multifaceted goddess, race, and the sacred purge. In her excellent 2017 documentary titled Savitri Devi, From the Aryans to the Alt-Right, Maria Margaronis begins by saying that Devi once prayed in front of a temple of Kalika for the Nazi victims of the Nuremberg trial who were unjustly accused of war crimes against humanity. Wow. Devi reportedly said, "Mother, dark blue mother, avenge them, avenge them, avenge them, the martyrs of Nuremberg."
Avenge the martyrs of Nuremberg.
For her, Hitler's only mistake was that he was too kind. Okay, I'm going to pause again. So, this is bringing it all together. New Age, Gnostics, Nazis, Manifest Sons of God, MAGA. According to Margaronis, the writing of alternative histories by the alt-right, neo-Nazi supremacists, and Hindu nationalists all flow together through Savitri's cracked vision. She says that the far right usually posits a lost utopia that's been undermined by the Bible people, the Holy Land people. Moreover, the alt-right promises to defeat the threat and make the country great again by winding back the clock to an idealized past when white men were firmly in control. Given some of the rumblings we have heard on the fringes of society in America and elsewhere, this misguided search for an idealized past should be apparent and called out for what it is: an anti-Christian call for violence and the suppression of truth. A thematic critique of the teachings of Julius Evola. Background. In his February 10, 2017 New York Times article titled "Steve Bannon Cited Italian Thinker Who Inspired Fascists," Jason Horowitz writes that Steve Bannon, former President Trump's ideological guru, made a favorable reference to the affiliated thinker Julius Evola at a Vatican conference in 2014. Furthermore, Evola, who became a darling of Italian fascists and Italy's post-fascist terrorists, has also caught on with leaders of the alt-right movement, which Bannon helped harness for Mr. Trump's political plans. Mark Sedgwick, a leading scholar of the anti-postmodernist traditionalist, said that the fact that Bannon even knows Evola is significant. Likewise, another Evola supporter said, "It's the first time that an advisor to the American president knows Evola, and it means a tremendous amount that Bannon was aware of Evola and other traditionalist thinkers." The Sacred Purge, the Devil Reborn, and Sacred Sex. What? As with Vladimir Solovyov and others influenced by the 2nd century Gnostic Valentinus and Kabbalah, Evola says that Woman in union with her is a means of participating in the divine. In a way similar to the ideas of Alice Bailey, Evola said that some differentiated individuals who follow the left-hand path of the occult use dark, violent sexual powers against the modern world. According to Evola, the left-hand path embraces violence. He believed, like Aleister Crowley the Satanist, that in sex magic there exists a strategy for aggression. Richard K. Payne, Dean of the Institute of Buddhist Studies, has said that Evola attempted to use sex magic in the service of right-wing violence. According to Evola, virile heroes such as Mussolini and Hitler are both generous and cruel. They possessed the ability to rule and committed Dionysian acts that might be seen as conventionally immoral. All underscores in italics mine. This appraisal comes as no surprise in that Evola wrote the article Reich and Imperium as elements in the New European Order, backed journal European Review. The multifaceted goddess, the devil reborn, and sacred sex. In The Mysteries of Woman in East and West, Part 2, 1958, Evola talks of union with the goddess, which he relates to the multifaceted goddess Sophia as a principle of liberation. He adds that a secret ritual known as
Pankatatva,
which is associated with the dark path of the left hand, gains the male participant special powers by uniting sexually with women. For Evola, the effects of this sex initiation are equal to those of the mystical awakening of the Kundalini. According to him, this is a dangerous power which produces liberation through the goddess. For example, echoing the sexually charged themes used in the Valentinian Gnostic sacraments of one, the deifying connection with one's personal angel in the consummation of the bridal chamber, and two, the redemption from the controlling powers of the Creator, the demiurge Jehovah. Evola says that the union of man with woman has the value of an initiation and announces the great liberation, i.e., a final renunciation of God. Wow. This confluence of, number one, sexual ritual, number two, deification, and three, a liberating renunciation of God the Creator, seems to foreshadow what might be some of the ingredients necessary for the restoration of the mystery religion stated by Helena Blavatsky, who paradoxically indicated that the religion of the future will be the religion of the past. That the religion of the future will be the religion of the past. So that's what the New Age is. That's the definition. It's the religion of the past for the New Age, the Age of Aquarius. A facsimile of this conception of restoration was Christianized by Vladimir Solovyov and Alice Bailey as the inauguration of a revitalized universal church. Universal church. How can Christians interpret these programs to improve the world through apostate religious themes anything other than a rebirth of the devil who, like the phoenix, seeks to rise triumphant out of the ashes of defeat? From the fringe of the fringe. The following fanatics and their ideologies come from groups or individuals that could easily be written off as just weird or insane. As a result, they can be seen as of no real importance due to their position on the extreme fringe of the fringe. However, it is still worth learning what thematic pieces of the puzzle they have to offer to the converging apostasy. As you will see, despite the far-flung nature of their beliefs and practices and the location which they occupy on the periphery of society, they have much in common with those who represent the norms of doctrines that are found in the teachings of their more civilized siblings in the converging apostasy. In his acclaimed book, Black Sun, Aryan Cults, Esoteric Nazism, and the Politics of Identity, 2002, Nicholas Goodrick Clark comes to a completely valid conclusion, which further illustrates this point. For example, he states that the thematically related beliefs of international sectarian groups could, under the proper conditions, gain political power and attempt to realize their dangerous millenarian fantasies. This point was forcefully brought to the attention of the American people on the first month of the year, on the 6th day in 2021, with the armed assault on the building in Washington, D.C. by the letter after P adherents, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and other patriots who felt the misguided desire to stop the steal. Among the groups and individuals that could potentially put their urge for sacred purge into action, Goodrick Clark lists: Number 1, those espousing the esoteric themes of Aryan origins. Number 2, those influenced by the writings of Julius Evola and Savitri Devi. 3, those who espouse UFO ideologies. Number 4, the Christian identity teaching of those like Wesley A. Swift. 5, the neo-fascist ideology of those like Richard Spencer and Alexander Dugin. Number 6, Hitler hate cults. Number 7, Nazi Satanists. And 8, Nordic racial paganism. What he was unaware of in 2002 was the increased number, radicalization, and normalization of those in the current day converging apostasy from both Christian and esoteric backgrounds who are already on the path toward enacting a sacred purge.
Run.
This video is a conversation, an interview between Scott McKay and Sasha Stone, the Christ-hating devils. The reason that I'm even talking about them is because of this, especially. You see, they're both very prominent in this movement, this patriotic blend of New Age, Great Awakening, and it's just my opinion that what we're looking at here is not good versus evil. It's more like Nazis versus commies, or fascist versus socialist, or it's all socialist. And look, they get their name right out of Alexander Dugin's book. Furthermore, we have Scott McKay here with his glory Dave Scarlett, and I have done a video on that. I'll try to link any related videos on my community page. And then of course we have Dave Scarlett and Julie Green. You know, so this is like all mixing together. And then we have Dave Scarlett with Bo Polney and Amanda Grace. Amanda Grace, who's got the mantle from Kim Clement, right? Furthermore, this is a very interesting one. Look at his face. Look at all their faces. Here's Dave Scarlett, and he has the generals on sometimes. And so you have Major General Paul E. Vallely, who's like, used to be like a Fox military analyst, you know, and now he's going on here with his glory Dave. Well, Paul E. Vallely is also featured in this video I did about the letter you can't say, the no-no letter, because his name is on this document with Michael Aquino. There they are, right there. Michael Aquino and his commander, Paul E. Vallely. And this is the Presidio base in San Francisco, which is also connected to a huge SA, maybe even SRA, abuse scandal, where Michael Aquino was accused of harming children in a very demonic way. Okay, and here's Colonel Michael Aquino in his full military uniform. And then here he is with Sammy Davis Jr. and Anton LaVey. And he started his own satanic church called the Temple of Set. And here's a meme I found, but it is actually truthful. One of the main strategists of fourth generation warfare, I think Michael Flynn talks about that a lot, operation known as the War on Terror, is Michael Aquino, the former head of all U.S. military psychological warfare operations. Before being promoted to the post of PSYOPs chief, Aquino was expelled from the Church of Satan for being too evil, and then implicated in one of the most horrific child abuse scandals in American history. What does this have to do with Sasha and Scott McKay? Also, I should tell you that I will have to probably bleep out some words and fuzz out some certain letters of the alphabet. And there is some swearing these guys do, and I will try to bleep out as much as I can. And here's a short clip from my previous video about the plan with Vallely and Aquino. Employs psychological operations to support field operations and strategic goals. PSYOPs are no longer limited to foreign audiences, as the paper Mind War by General Paul E. Vallely and Colonel Michael Aquino, the Satanist, makes this very clear. And here's the front of the paper. From PSYOP to Mind War, the Psychology of Victory. One of the things that is discussed in this paper is how the Vietnam War was lost in the hearts and minds of the American people at home. The logo at the top says, "Support by Truth," and indeed the Mind War paper discusses using truth to gain the trust of the target audience and to develop a perception as being trustworthy. Within the U.S. military, PSYOP has habitually been relegated to a backseat as a force multiplier. The principal strategic decisions are made in consideration of traditional political and military interests and goals. Only then is the PSYOP invited to the table to help achieve already agreed upon missions more efficiently. Mind War reverses this sequence. Psychological means for achieving victory, essentially through convincing the enemy that he really wants to bring his national policies into harmony with ours, are fashioned in support of basic political goals. The use of ordinary military force, bombs and bullets, etc., is regarded as a last resort in circumstances wherein Mind War by itself fails. Aquino explains that before the Vietnam War, the use of psychological operations were limited and almost disinterested. He believed that by adopting Mind War, a battle could be won without any bullets ever being fired. This new battlefield would be within the minds of men. Here's a little more info on Mind War. Vallely co-authored a 1980 paper with then PSYOP analyst Michael Aquino titled From PSYOP to Mind War, the Psychology of Victory. Mind War is defined as the deliberate, aggressive convincing of all participants in a war that we will win that war. The paper contrasts the use of psychological operations such as propaganda with a new approach. The paper contains this passage. Unlike PSYOP, Mind War has nothing to do with deception or even with selected and therefore misleading truth. Rather, it states a whole truth that if it does not now exist, will be forced into existence by the will of the United States. So in a sense, they are using truthful things to deceive and manipulate and to control and to redirect and to lead people in a certain direction. About Presidio, which is the military base where Vallely was the commander and Aquino was, there was a child sex abuse case. This is from PubMed. Preschool child abuse, the aftermath of the Presidio case. In the abstract, it says, a case study is presented of girls who were among the preschool victims of sexual abuse linked to occult rituals that occurred at the Presidio Army-based Child Development Center. Components of the trauma, together with its effects on the victims and their families, are investigated and implications for the mental health profession are discussed. There's a lot you can look up about Aquino and this case, but wouldn't it just be so ironic if the people who developed the operation, the psychological warfare, mind war operation, were in fact satanic pedophiles of all things? How ironic.
Hail Satan!
Hail Satan!
Is one of a number of daggers which we may use in our rituals. This one happened to belong to the commanding general of the most elite unit of Germany's infamous SS, which was concerned with black magic and occultism research in general. Anything that it could find that had to do with the origins of the human race, destiny of humanity.
The perverted view of the occult held by Heinrich Himmler was of an evil magic that could help create a new master race. Wewelsburg Castle is where he performed his ceremonies.
I have been to the Wewelsburg, which still preserves Heinrich Himmler's ritual chambers to this day, and have conducted a black magical ritual in the so-called Hall of the Dead beneath the Wewelsburg.
Which brings us back to this. This Great Awakening, Reawaken America tour, in my opinion, is the letter after P, continued. And I speculate, and I really do actually believe the mastermind of that mind war idea that is what they're doing. And they're promoting the New Age. Super duper, as you will see. Which is satanic, and Hitler Hay was a New Ager, satanic, occult believer. Which you'll see in this next clip.
Hello, I'm Jessie Gray. Welcome to Personalities. This afternoon we have a guest whom I talked to around 4 months ago and have been wanting to meet ever since. Her name is Dusty Sklar. She's the author of the book Gods and Beasts. It's about the relationship of the occult beliefs and the rise of the Nazi philosophy in Germany during, of course, pre- and World War II. She's going to tell us more about it, and I welcome you. Thank you for coming. First of all, before we go into how the occult beliefs influenced Nazism, what do you consider occult?
Well, occult simply means hidden. And occult societies usually act on the assumption that you can develop these hidden secret powers if you work on yourself in the right way and under the right master.
By hidden, though, does that include, let's take the popular forms of the occult, the astrology, extrasensory perception, the what we'd call the cultist groups?
Well, the occultists take all those ideas and claim that they're part of an ancient body of knowledge that's been lost and that only they are privy to because they're using certain rituals to restore themselves to this lost knowledge.
How did the Nazis use the occult, or these supposedly sacred and very sacred and what am I trying to say, precious and privy only to a few beliefs?
Well, I should tell you that the story begins in pre-World War I Germany, and there were two occult groups in particular that I researched. George Lanz von Liebenfeld's Order of New Templars and Guido von List's Armanen. And both of these groups were patterned pretty much after the Theosophical Society, Madame Blavatsky had developed a package that appealed to many people all over Europe and in America, and she became the model for occult groups at that time. And both Lanz and List used her syncretism, but with a peculiar twist. They married Darwin's idea of evolution with Hindu ideas of racial purity and came up with the idea that the Aryan had been a lost race of supermen that had declined because they merged their pure blood with the defiled blood of the Jews.
When were these books published? When were these philosophies
Well, this was shortly before World War I, at the turn of the century.
Oh, for goodness sake. Then how did the Nazis pick these cultist beliefs up?
Well, then, just before World War I, these two groups merged under an umbrella organization called the Thule Society. And the Thule Society did not become political until after World War I. And that eventually became the Nazi Party. But the seeds of the occult...
It became transformed directly into the Nazi Party.
Right, with the same ideology, the same platform. But the important thing is that all the policies that the Nazis implemented were already suggested by these occult groups, Lanz and List. Lanz proposed the extermination of the Jews as a way to restore this lost civilization. Another thing to remember is that these men had fathers who had been influenced by Lanz and Liszt. They were taught by teachers who had been influenced, so that this was not a totally new thing to them. But the main thing is that Hitler appealed to people on the basis that he was going to usher in a new age, and a new age, and a new age, and they were going to be the new men in this new age. They were going to be the elite, and this was terribly appealing.
And he must have taken very seriously the fact that these beliefs also held the fact that a new Messiah or a Messiah was necessary, and everybody had a blind obedience to the Messiah, that was a necessary and integral part of this whole occult belief. Am I right?
Yes. One of the surprising things that I found in researching the book was that the Messiah was awaited with great eagerness long before Hitler came. This too began in the late 19th century. There was very much the feeling of the last days, and the second coming of the Messiah was expected imminently. And Lanz tried to put himself forth as the Messiah, and so did Liszt, and it didn't work. But a lot of people around were preaching the coming of the Messiah. And Hitler, when he first came on the scene, did not declare himself the Messiah. He was only the herald. But gradually he evolved into the Messiah figure. And contemporary observers have written that they used to see pictures in Germany of Hitler in store windows flanked by pictures of Jesus.
Really?
And that these were yanked out at some point.
Sounds really terribly, terribly similar to many of the cultist groups today. Do you see any possibility of something like this happening here?
Well, this is one reason I wrote the book, Jesse, because I began to look around at many of the cults that have grown to an alarming rate in America today, and I see the same sort of thing happening. There are men coming forth and claiming to be messiahs and being believed by perfectly decent, idealistic young people, intelligent, many of them. And the techniques that they use are classic brainwashing techniques, which I think people don't take seriously. We look at these cults and think they're innocuous, but they are actually using mind control.
Well, we only think they're innocuous because their proportions haven't been large enough yet to affect government decisions, perhaps, which influence us directly. I mean, I guess until it reaches that level, people don't pay much attention to them unless, of course, they have someone in one and are immediately affected by it. I guess that's the basis for everything.
But many of these cults make no bones about the fact that they have political ambitions. They have political ambitions. They have political ambitions.
No, they don't. No, they don't. Brainwashing techniques, the same idealism is brought, or at least imposed, and seems endless. You'd think it would stop after people learn and other, for instance, the Nazis have been exposed, but it doesn't stop. It just changes form a little and keeps right on going, doesn't it? Just changes form a little and keeps right on going, doesn't it?
Well, I don't think people are paying any attention. I mean, I think this too happened in Nazi Germany. After the war, people said if we had only known what it's about, we would have stopped him right at the beginning. And today in America, there are people who are assuming a lot of power and amassing a lot of wealth and influencing many, many young people, and nobody's doing anything. I think years from now, they may look back and say the same thing. If we had only known what this man was about at the beginning.
Do you see the cults rising to that much power?
I see that it's possible for the cults to merge under one umbrella organization in America and be taken over by a politically right group, just as happened in Germany.
You do.
Themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. The world is waking up, and this is the tipping point.
Gentlemen, here we go. This is the epic broadcast of the Tipping Point Revolution Radio, the warfare platform that we chose here, Revolution Radio, for this channel, for this show, for the Tipping Point, primarily because this is the worldwide reach that we get to have here, uncensored, coarse and unbiased view of the truth. Unbiased means we're anti-Satanist, anti-Satanist all the way around, and acceptable of everything else on the planet except that agenda, and I'm an equal opportunity offender as well. So those of you who do not walk in that line of serving humanity, you're likely a target. You're likely a target. Folks, tonight we are broadcast because you are the funders of this platform and the network. Your donations allow us to breathe and survive and thrive through this massive awakening. That's happening cutting through the fog of bullshit, i.e. war, that's put out there by the political class, by big pharma, big tech, Hollywood, Vatican, royal families, and any other of the pieces of scumbag global architecture that has been, by design, destroying humanity's experience on its ascension path here on Terra, or what you call planet Earth. A couple of announcements here. The biggest announcement tonight is this. Tonight's guest is the international icon. Sasha Stone is coming in tonight. I know Sasha, by the way, I was not there today on AGN. I am a co-host there with Scotty Sachs, Sasha Stone. I can't always make that particular show, although I do as often as I can. Yes, no, I was not there today. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to. And yes, no, I know General Flynn was on there today. And somebody put out there, yeah, Scott is whatever. Let me tell you something, folks. There's a lot of horse shit flying around out there. I don't know how else to say it, but let me just tell you this. This war is getting to the point where we know it would come, where it's getting dirty. The people that should be responsible in this medium, podcasters, etc. I'm seeing things that aren't surprising to me because we were told this was coming, but I mean, I'm watching this podcast world basically melt down. And I want to say I don't get it, but I totally get it because this was predicted. It was foretold.
Foretold means the letter after P. Does this guy really even believe in this? Or he just wants you to believe in it?
I'm going to say this again. Everybody's being watched. Everybody. And here's what I understand. This is going to be a different playing field 7 months from now. Why? Because the board, as I'm being told from higher level sources than me, that this board is going to be cleared. That there's going to be a lot of people in this podcast world who are irresponsible, who are self-serving, who are bullshit machines, who are whatever, that aren't going to be here.
This reminds me of the theme of the Sacred Purge, maybe.
That's what I was told, that the landscape's going to be different. So I don't know who I'm saying this to, you or to the other podcasters, but I'm going to say this again. How in the hell can any podcast or any personality how can they be attacking another one in their community? Those people out there doing the best they can with the tools that they have or the knowledge that they do have. But I'm going to put the brakes on going after the Khazarian mobsters.
I think that would be code for the people from the Holy Land.
And the child killers. And I'm going to start attacking my fellow soldier and fragging him in the back. I do not effing understand that on any level. That's what gets me thrown off of here, throwing that bomb out there. But that's how serious I am about this bullshit. I'm seeing it, hearing about it, and I'm just telling you. I've said this for 4 years now. If you hear, now listen, yes, I understand there are some things going on out there, some people that are being exposed that likely need to be. I don't know who, I'm not the arbiter of any of that. That's above my pay grade. I have my own personal thoughts and opinions on a number of people, but they stay with me. You're never going to hear them here unless somebody needs a beating, which I never give out. Because, again, it pulls us off the mission here, and the mission is more important than anything else, anything ego-based and ego-driven. But a lot of stuff out there is becoming disruptive to the actual focus of this mission. And
interesting stuff coming up here with Sasha Stone, as well as he's going to be going on a tour. So we are going to bring Sasha Stone into the show right now, and we're going to get into what I would consider an epic conversation piece with one of my best buddies in the world. Like I said, I traveled with this man, and I got to know him on a level that very few people can. I'm a huge fan of him, his work, and just want to say much love to you, brother. Always another exotic, extravagant backdrop. You may be in the world today. Always looks good. Good to have you here, man, on The Tipping Point. You're on Revolution Radio tonight, as well as Facebook streaming live.
Beautiful. Nice to see you, Scott. Thank you, brother. So I don't even know where to start. We can go in 50 directions right from the hub of the wheel and always have a great show. But what I want to talk about first, coming out of the gate, is this. I was listening to you recently, and you were on with some beautiful girl, and you are speaking about where we are, where we're headed in the angelic realm.
Oh, gnarly!
And you were talking in its construct, but also the application of what's happening here in this battle, this great awakening. I think, quite honestly, look, it's the Patriot movement is at full speed. The Patriot rallies, I think we're beyond that. I think we've had enough of those in terms of the rah-rah. We know we're headed for troubled waters, and we know there's certain mechanical things that we need to and should be prepared to do to at least sustain some level of comfort as we're going through this very rocky period in the country where it appears we're going to lose a nation. You and I both know we won't, because if we did, we lose the world. We're not going to let that happen.
But if we're looking at the angelic realm, some people run away from the esoteric, the metaphysical, the quantum physical. I don't run from any of that, because to me that's where the secrets lie and what has been robbed from us, that kind of knowledge.
Gnosticism.
But when you speak specifically on this angelic realm of what I don't even know how to ask the question, what it is, how it is not just a piece of who and what we are, it's all of who and what we are, and how they've been able to pull this veil over us so we can't see it, and if we could right now, not even understand it. I saw you having this dialogue, and I thought, man, I've got to bring you down this track on the show here.
Gnosticism.
So we can get outside of the box of fundamentalist Christianity, of which I come from, of the dogmatic, Vatican-driven machine of MK Ultra programming, all of that, breaking out of that, expanding the Christ consciousness in the true form that Christ did, and try to communicate to us. So let's just have Sasha launch into where we are now and what all of this means, how it was foretold, and what is it going to look like.
So in the first instance, of course, I understand when you say that certain folks are going to shy away from the esoteric, which is to say, to shy away from the real emergent language, which is a great shame. It is precisely religion, monotheistic religiosity, which bludgeoned out of us, especially the white skins, an innate capacity to connect with the wisdom flame. The wisdom flame.
I am the violet flame in action in me now. I am the violet flame to light alone I bow. I am the violet flame in mighty cosmic power. I am the light of God, shining every hour. I am the violet flame, blazing like the sun. I am God's sacred power, freeing everyone.
With the esoteric realms, the mystical tradition, so to speak. So let me just remind those hardened, more skeptical people who would shy away from the esoteric elements.
This is directed at you, Christian. That's what this is. This is directed at Christians, to turn them.
Let me remind them that the roots of the Christian faith are utterly drenched, steeped in the mystical tradition. The Essenes and the Cathars, who were the true flame keepers and wisdom keepers of the Christic faith, and the true devotees and adherents of the Master Jesus. And
this is the ascended masters, and they have a Jesus, which is not Jesus Christ of Nazareth, the Son of God.
Held true to the real fellowship that the life and times of the Master from Nazareth urged upon all of humanity. Let us not forget that it was the Essenes and the Cathars, and they were utterly steeped in the mythic and mystic tradition. So it is the mystical traditions of Islam, Sufism, that has its beauty and its majesty as well. Once that was converted into monotheistic religiosity, as with the Judaic faith, the mystical traditions of Judaism, the Zohar, and the kind of Kabbalistic leaning, the sacred numerology leaning, which now, today, religious adherents will say that's all witchcraft and hoo-ha. No, that's not. That's the wisdom flame.
When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee.
That's the bit that you've lost touch with today. So the mainstream monotheistic religious mind today is a mind by definition that has been bludgeoned away from its true flame of esoteric wisdom.
I can always tell when somebody's lying. I just need to know two things: what the person is saying and what the truth is. And if those things are different, the person's lying.
Esoteric wisdom. And that's a great shame. That is a tremendous sadness, because it is the religious mind that has basically been cultivated or engineered into becoming a political mind, a cult-programmed, culturalized mind. So I'm not afraid to move into the esoteric realms, nor are you. That takes us into the metaphysical realms. The metaphysical realms are an indicator toward the hyperdimensional realms. The hyperdimensional realm is where we begin to see the actual play. The actual play out of reality is taking place there.
Gobbledygook.
So let me ask that that mainstream, somewhat blindsided, myopic Christian worldview. Let me challenge that for a moment. Why do you think it is that we're about to tiptoe into a total solar eclipse in a few days from now, on the 8th of April? Why do you think that the trajectory of the total eclipse of the sun over North America is going to traverse exactly overhead 7 towns called Nineveh in the United States? And why do you and no other towns in the United States or North America called Nineveh, just the 7? Why do you think the trajectory of the solar eclipse goes exactly over the arc in the sky over those 7? This was known to the forefathers. This was known to the founding fathers, to the Midnight Masons, who were behind the design and the engineering of the United States, and even the whole 1776 hoo-ha that we're all very kind of committed to. The DNA, mRNA.
See how he blends those two together real fast?
Of the average American is the melting pot, the cauldron of all of humanity, the rainbow tribe, if you will. There's a reason why these mystic traditions and Masonic secret societies and the abstruse language that comes from that basement is orchestrating reality for us. And yet we're kept dumbed down by Nickelodeon and Disney and CNN and so on and so forth. So it is about time we returned to that wisdom flame and start to connect to it. Now, the First Nation peoples, your people, Scott, the Cherokee, all of the First Nation peoples, the 500 plus federally recognized First Nation tribes of North America, and the 750 odd, actually that's how many we're talking in real terms, tribes, are the ones who are carrying essentially the wisdom, the real wisdom flame. I was gifted this blue corn by the Hopi in Arizona a few weeks ago, which I regard as the most precious object I have now in this world.
Use of rainbow in other cultures. Among other non-Christian cultures, there has been heavy rainbow usage. This is also connected with psychic and prophetic activity. Some of the more prominent examples are the Australian Aborigines and the Native American cultures, particularly the Hopis. Here we will discuss the legend of the warrior of the rainbow among the Hopis. Considered by the Hopis to be an important prophecy, it has gained great favor among the New Agers and their allies. The foregoing will discuss the deep significance of this legend to those in the New Age movement, as well as among their allies in the United Nations. Native American spiritualities and the rainbow. Jesus told us to go into all the world and teach all men in his name. This has now been reinterpreted by all too many both inside and outside the church. The modern apostate meaning given his command is that we were to go into all the world and tell everybody that they had been correct all along. Is the Great Spirit merely another incarnation of God? Or is the same true of the Great Spirit that the Apostle Paul said of all pagan cultures? Those who worship idols worship devils. Native American spiritualities are an extremely popular component of the New Age movement. Two popular writers on this subject are William Walloya and Vincent Brown. They look forward, as does top-ranking United Nations official Robert Mueller, to the fulfillment of the Hopi prophecies containing startling implications for the Christian community. Quote, the chiefs were told that the light that would bring this reawakening would come from the east, and that it would come from the true white brother. He would wear a red cloak or a red hat. What? A red hat? Sorry. And would bring with him the sacred stone tablet, which the true white brother alone could read. The three would show the people of the earth a great new life plan that will lead to everlasting life. Those who are saved will share everything equally, a new religion, and probably be brought, a new religion will probably be brought that helps all people to lead better lives and transforms the world. Doesn't that sound great? Not stated by these authors was the fact that these same prophecies also call for a victory of those utilizing the swastika over those using the sign of the cross.
I was gifted this blue corn by the Hopi in Arizona a few weeks ago, which I regard as the most precious object I have now in this world. The Hopi have been carrying the wisdom flame for many centuries. It's all coming to roost now. This year, 2024 into 2025, not by Sasha Stone's woolly-headed decree, but by the decree of prophecy of the Rainbow Tribe, of the Eagle and the Condor, of the Hopi, of the Bible prophecies, Nostradamus prophecies. They're all vectoring into the here and now. So those immanent flame of the so-called esoteric are going to be in deep trouble, because what they're going to be seeing is a complete collapse of their entire conceptual worldview, because their conceptual worldview, albeit good Christians, good Muslims, good Hindus, good Buddhists, is tethered to Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah is the issue of the devil. We're living in a dualistic universe.
Gnosticism.
It's playing out in social politics and economics, and right here, right now, we're seeing a collapse of the citadel, of the Babylonian citadel. The Babylonian citadel.
And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled.
So that compression of the end of days, the apocalypse, the Armageddon, the global financial meltdown, the collapse of Walt Disney and Hollywood, the collapse of the Vatican and the crowns of Europe. I mean, dear God, if those aren't all the symbols writ large, what is? We've arrived, friends. There is no time left to be questioning the bloody obvious. We have got to open our hearts and minds. We've got to relinquish adherence to the false light, the false light.
The false light.
And as I've been saying for some years, and somewhat unpopularly, Scott, most good Christians today are idolaters. They're holding on to the false light construct of religiosity, which is a dead man on a stick, which is a dead man on a stick.
Which is a dead man on a stick.
Now that kind of language scares the hell out of most Christians, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't, because there is no part of the message of the Master Yeshua, the Master Jesus, that asks us or invites us to revere and worship at the broken feet of a dead man nailed to a cross. All of that stuff seems to be the issue of Council of Nicaea, the Roman Catholic Church, which is predicated on the murder of the Cathars, the real fellowship of Christ. So we're in that realm of mind fury at the collective level. We're going to have to grow big boy and big girl panties very soon.
That's the one thing, Sasha, for me, is the anchor that I think is going to be the biggest barrier. I think, first of all, I said this here many times, stages around the country, large church stages. And I said, look, the worst thing that's ever happened to America or to humanity is religion. Religion's the single worst thing. Religion's the single worst thing.
In case you haven't noticed, what he actually means is Christianity, believing that Jesus is God Almighty. That's what he means.
That has ever happened. Look, you got to use some common sense here. Our Creator, this all-knowing, this all-powerful deity of light, conscious thought, a photonic signature, that is of and created all things is not going to create an architecture that's going to cause confusion. That's absurd. I was born a sinner. If I'm made of perfect creation, how can I be a sinner? How can I be a sinner?
Well, there you go, folks. That is the number one step to become saved, is to realize that you're a sinner and that you need a savior. But no, these people do not believe that. They believe that they're little gods, or they forgot that they were little gods. This is the Luciferian doctrine. Remember in the beginning when he said, I'm anti-Satanist? No, he's not anti-Satanist. He is totally Satanist.
Look, I have friends who are devout Christians, and they don't like how I talk. They love me as a human, but they can push aside what I say because we have a relationship. But this is my thought and feeling. As a born-again Christian at 14, my head was in that book, 300 days a year for 20 years. You have to sit back and let your spiritual intuition guide you on what's bullshit and what's not. Being sold that I'm a sinner, that's a way to bring down the power of one's own image of self, which can be very valuable even in this matrix for having the confidence to be able to stand your ground in a spiritual light versus what the dogmatic army is marching toward you. That's how I see it. So I don't mind defending my Christian friends. I have friends of mine that are pastors that have opposing views, but we still have love for each other and respect. That's what true Christedness is. That's what a true friendship is. We can have differing opinions on how we feel about things. I'm not smart enough to have gone to seminary or read enough to come to these conclusions. These are what come from me internally through my soul into my consciousness that settles in on me in a way that I'm very comfortable with saying it because I obviously believe it. I'm tapping into my higher self or into my higher self, higher dimensions, because it certainly can't come from the rudimentary thinking that I possess in this matrix. That's why I have a comfort level with it.
We really do need to pray for people like him and those who are being influenced by him, and similarly, people in the NAR who also have a Luciferian doctrine.
Go into our second half right now, and just to show all of you, since we're talking about Christ and the Christ consciousness right here, I do have my armor of God on right there. We're wielding the sword of the Archangel Michael. I borrowed it just for the show. This is a battle we're up against, and for, again, my Christian friends, understand we do still think the same.
False. I do not.
I've identified my church in the country is Pastor Bob Joyce's church in Benton, Arkansas.
Okay, this is just kind of funny. Just wait for it. I just had to show you this.
Is this man actually Elvis Presley? Many people believe Elvis Presley faked his own death for protection against the mafia, and there was no evidence until now. A man named Bob Joyce, who's a pastor living in a small town in Benton, Arkansas. Many people believe this is Elvis Presley. There have been sights of Bob Joyce at Elvis's house Graceland on Christmas, and this isn't even the scariest part. Bob Joyce was actually rumored to have attended Elvis Presley's daughter's funeral, which was an invite-only event. There's many of other signs that Bob Joyce is Elvis Presley living out his older days without the fame, including the fact that no man has ever come close to singing like Elvis Presley except Bob Joyce. Bob Joyce is a very religious man who owns a church. It was told Elvis Presley had gotten very religious towards the end of his life and wanted to find himself. Many believe we will see Bob Joyce open up very soon. Do you think Bob is Elvis?
No, I don't. But also, Elvis actually followed Helena Blavatsky too, so there's that.
I can sit there for hours listening to this man because I see something in Pastor Bob that I have never seen in a church in my life. And his message to me is that, which I've been saying for the last 20 years, stop looking up, stop looking out, look in. God is within you, go inside of you. That's where your creator resides.
Look in. God is within you, go inside of you. That's where your creator resides.
Gnosticism.
Which gives you all the power you need to be able to help us shift.
And do we not also hear a lot of the NAR prophets and apostles talk about power and shifting and a shift coming and a paradigm shift, etc.?
This reality into the one that was intended for us.
The point I'm trying to make is that as we now have this end of days play out on the kingdom of the devil's checkerboard.
Also notice how Sasha likes to throw around in both of them all these Christian words, and they're against the devil, they're against Satan and the devil's checkerboard. It makes you think that they're against the devil, so they must be good, right?
Wrong.
it is only mathematically, appropriate that we see a bifurcation happening of the wheat from the chaff. Again, that also relates to biblical prophecy. And so we have that bifurcation happening now at this fulmination, alchemization, at the end of this great cycle. What is that going to look like? It means that humanity are bifurcating into essentially one of two types. The one that is in a state of constriction, fear, genuflecting to authority, rolling its sleeve up when it's told to do so, taking the knee and paying coin to Caesar, abnegating any soul sovereignty or conscience or consciousness by definition, and participating in this emergent AI, transhumanist, ghastly Luciferian smart city agenda. Great. Roll your sleeve up, get your chip, you will be minimized, you will be reduced into that kind of creature. You might live a long time, you will be plasma harvested for the rest of your days. And conversely, there's another kind of human that's emerging, Scott, and that I refer to simply as the living sons and daughters of God, the living men and women of the living soil, those who say, "Get thee behind me, Satan," those who can clearly see white from black and good from bad and night from day, and Anthony Fauci from their local naturopath. So we can see quite clearly, one, we're in a state of expansiveness, of affirmation, of abundance, We're looking into the immanent nature of reality. We're touching those mystical roots of our faith, and we're feeling fueled and affirmed and empowered by that endowment of a real relationship with Christ, or a real relationship with God, which is a dead man on a stick, which is a dead man on a stick, which is a dead man on a stick.
Run.
Reading an article from Paw Creek Ministries. Part 1. Paul Cain and Rick Joyner. Editor's note. Key charismatics such as Rick Joyner, Paul Cain, and others are helping to prepare for the New World Order. In this article, you will hear about Rick Joyner and others visiting the archives of Adolf Hitler, who was supported and defended by the Catholic Church. Rick Joyner, Mahesh Shavada, Ricky Skaggs, etc. being knighted by the Knights of Malta, an ancient Catholic order. A representative of Knights of Malta arranging a meeting for Paul Cain with Saddam Hussein inside Iraq. Details of the meeting between Saddam and Cain. Details manifesting that the Catholic Church organizations are working close with Saddam Hussein in its drive for the One World Order. A one world religion led by the Pope being one of the greatest forces in the final inauguration of this sinister one world government. Apparitions of Mary and apparitions of New Wave charismatics as the driving forces preparing people's minds for this final stage of prophetic fulfillment. It's breathtaking to watch the Holy Scripture being perfectly fulfilled. Most Bible students have read about a coming one world order that would be ruled over by an Antichrist figure disguised as Jesus Christ himself. All of us must admit that reading and hearing about this is totally different than watching it begin to happen. In fact, there are multitudes of people that have heard all of this for years but have no discernment that it's actually transpiring right under their noses. Many are even participating in its development unknown to themselves. It's the kind of deception that Jesus and Bible writers predicted would occur. Daniel warned that the very day when this one world order scenario would begin to develop, he said, "And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God will be strong and do exploits." Daniel 11:32. The word flatteries, as used by Daniel, is a feminine form of deception. It suggests the use of flattery by silly, giddy persons who act in a religious spirit. If you watch one or two episodes of Trinity Broadcast Network's Praise the Lord television show, or listen to endless proclamations of Paul Cain and Rick Joyner, plus many other in this religious New Wave camp, you will have the perfect preparation to get the masses ready. Ministers by the thousands are being swept into this camp from varied backgrounds. This is from 2009, I think, maybe even earlier. When you see New Wave camp, think New Apostolic Reformation. The basic theological positions on end-time doctrines that will govern this movement is either postmillennialism, which states that Jesus will return after 1,000 years of religious peace, dominion theology, which states that the church is to establish the kingdom of God on earth, or some abbreviated form of these two. These two doctrines are represented by the Catholic Church and other religious groups, postmillennialism, and the Charismatic New Wave churches, plus the Reconstructionist groups, dominion theology. The belief of Catholics and Charismatics in this kind of stewed interpretation has certainly laid the foundation for them to be totally deceived. Both of these doctrinal ideas despise any teaching of a pre-tribulation rapture or the 7 years of tribulation to follow the rapture. The great cry of worldwide revival is intimately tied to this false concept of a new world order. There is not a true Bible Christian on this earth that does not want revival. But when revival is connected to postmillennialism or dominion theology, the entire idea becomes everything but truth. While every one of us are fasting and praying for revival, it must be revival tied to our hope and expectancy of the glorious rapture of the bride of Christ, and not revival based on compromise, one world religions, or a political place in the current power struggle. It will be the uncompromising remnant that meets the King in the air. These men that we are reporting, the things documented in this article about, are extremely sincere. When you see key charismatic leaders knighted by one of the strongest of all Catholic organizations, there has to be something incredible occurring. For this to happen, connected to a visit to the archives of historic Nazism, makes the entire scenario sinister. Add to that a man that has just returned from a visit to Austria and a personal time in the presence of Kurt Waldheim, a former Nazi leader. Then add that same man arranging for a personal visit by Paul Cain to Saddam Hussein, and you are hearing earth-shaking matters. Of all the ideas, research, or documentation that I have ever shared, nothing is more breathtaking than this information. Let's go as deep as possible into the reports of these men. Rick Joyner visits the archives of Adolf Hitler. In the tapes which I am quoting, Mr. Joyner did not share the reasons for his visit to Germany and the archives of Nazism. A book written by Dave Hunt entitled A Woman Rides the Beast may help you understand the connections. Adolf Hitler was clearly supported and protected by the Catholic Church. The Knights of Malta were closely connected to Hitler by virtue of the Catholic connection. Here is a bit of documentation to confirm this fact. The Catholic Rite and the Knights of Malta, in particular Baron Franz von Papen, played a critical role in Hitler's assumption of power in the launching of the Third Reich's 20th century crusade. Sovereign Military Order of Malta influence in Germany survived World War II intact. On November 17, 1948, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta awarded one of its highest honors, the Grand Cross of Merit, to Reinhard Gehlen, the Nazi chief of intelligence on the Soviet front. He was subsequently installed by the Americans as the first chief of West Germany's equivalent of the CIA. The Budennachrichtendienst. I took German. BND, Federal Secret Service. I think they call it the Bund for short. Under the West German Chancellor Adenauer, a devout Catholic who had received the Magistral Grand Cross personally from the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, Grand Master Prince Chigi. Nazis, the Vatican and CIA, Winter 1986, number 25, page 27 and 29. The Roman Catholic Church has an entity has proven record of anti-Semitism. We must not forget that there are thousands of Catholic people misled in their doctrines, but not of the nature to do the dark things against the Jews that the political organization of the Catholic Church has done. Why would Rick Joyner find such pleasure in visiting the historic sites of the Nazi regime? First, let's read his account of that visit and about him meeting a Knight of Malta and hearing of their interest to knight him. Quote, I was in Berlin with a man who is considered one of the foremost authorities on Nazi Germany, Colonel Eugene Bird, who was the commandant of the Spandau prison, which housed all the war criminals after the war. And he's the one who wrote the book, The Loneliest Man in the World, which was the memoirs of Rudolf Hess, who was Hitler's number 2 man. And Colonel Bird has just taken myself and Paul Cain and a friend of ours on the most incredible tour of Berlin that day. And he had the greatest, I think, still has the greatest insight into what happened spiritually there. And you know, we went to Hitler's bunker and we went all over the place, and he just gave us a personal tour. Joyner tells about Colonel Bird being on 60 Minutes. And he gave Paul and I the same tour. It was one of the most fascinating days I have ever had in my life. And we were eating dinner with Colonel Bird, and I was saying, and we're talking all this stuff, and I said, you ever heard of these Knights of Malta? And he said, well, I am one. And he pulls out his credentials, and he said, you know they still exist. And I knew they still existed because I had met a few around, but they are hardly known here. But they are known in Europe. And he said, as a matter of fact, this one knight who is called the Knight Commander, a Knight Commander, has recommended you to be knighted, and he's looking for you now. I talked to him. They had been reading our journals and stuff like that, and heard of and head of the order had been baptized in the Holy Spirit and wanted to see them become a spiritual force, just like they had been a natural force. Colonel Bird tells me, this one guy, he was an Austrian baron, he said, he's looking for you. He's already recommended you to be knighted. Unquote. Audio by Rick Joyner Ministries. No date on tape. The strange connection between the archives of Hitler and Nazism and the Knights of Malta, as well as the Catholic Church, cannot be considered accidental. Also, the fact that Rick Joyner and Paul Cain are interested in these connections have far-reaching meanings. Please note that Rick Joyner said of Colonel Eugene Bird, a Knight of Malta member, that he had the greatest insight into what happened spiritually there. What could he have meant by such a remark? The statement appears to have been spoken in the positive and suggests that both Joyner and Bird saw Nazism in a spiritual light. It's important to inject one of the primary teachings of Paul Cain and the New Wave Charismatics. They claim to be developing and training Joel's army to police the unruly world in the coming kingdom of God on earth. Joel's army has been described as a kind of Nazi organization that will force obedience to worldwide religion unity soon to envelop the earth. Their doctrine of dominion theology clearly projects a one-world government with a one-world religion. Joel's army will be similar to the Crusaders who fought and conquered their way to the city of Jerusalem in the 11th century. Pause. Yes, I've thought about this, and especially the Seven Mountain Mandate is basically that's what it is. It's a one-world government, a one-world religion. How are people... I don't get it. Unpause. The time of the Crusaders was the actual time of history when the Knights of Malta was founded. The historic and futurist connection of all this is breathtaking. Following is an explanation of why the Knights of Malta is knighting non-Catholics and persons outside the nobility ranks of Europe. The Sovereign Military and Hospitaller Order of St. John of Jerusalem, of Rhodes, and of Malta, known also as the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, or SMOM, is juridically, politically, and historically unique in the world today, representing initially the most powerful and reactionary segments of the European aristocracy for nearly 1,000 years, beginning with the early Crusades of the 12th century. It has organized, funded, and led military operations against states and ideas deemed threatening to its power. It is probably safe to say that the several thousand knights of the sovereign military of Malta, principally in Europe, North, Central, and South America, comprise the largest, most consistently powerful, and reactionary membership of any organization in the world today. Quote, although an exclusively Roman Catholic organization, in this century it has collaborated with and given high awards to non-Catholic extremists in its current crusade against progressive forces in the West, the national liberation movements, and the socialist countries. To be a knight, one must not only be from wealthy aristocratic lineage, one must also have psychological worldview which is attracted to the Crusader mentality of these warrior monks. Participating in the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, including its initiation ceremonies and feudal ritual dress, members embrace a certain caste or class mentality. They are sociologically and psychologically predisposed to function as the shock troops of Catholic reaction. And this is precisely the historical role the Knights have played in the wars against Islam, against the Protestant heresy, and against the Soviet evil empire. And that's from Nazis, the Vatican, and CIA, winter of 1986. Rick Joyner, knighted by the Knights of Malta. Research into the Knights of Malta is quite an experience. Both the Catholic Church and Masonic Order have an organization called by this name. The Sovereign Military Order of Malta, Federal Association USA, says in an internet communication, there are dozens of organizations which use the name, symbols, and traditions of the Order of Malta in an unauthorized fashion. They list a group of 13 such organizations, but state clearly the organizations listed below have no affiliation with the Order of Malta and are not recognized by the Vatican. The primary organization, called the Knights of Malta, has its headquarters in the Vatican of Rome and is clearly controlled and operated by the Catholic Church. Their official website gives their name as the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. They state of themselves that this is a lay religious order of the Catholic Church. It was founded in Jerusalem in 1099, and it was approved formally as an order by the Pope in 1113. They also say of themselves, the Order of Malta was admitted to the United Nations as a permanent observer on August 24, 1994. They also claim official diplomatic relations with over 80 states and international organizations. The Order of Malta is clearly a Catholic order controlled by the Pope and totally committed to the Pope, the Virgin Mary, and the service to Roman Catholic ideas and causes. It is a powerful and massive organization. With this background, why would charismatic leaders have an interest in being an intimate part, being knighted, and accepting responsibility to serve the Roman Church? The answer is simply that a large body of charismatic leaders have adopted the same ultimate goals of a one-world government, a one-world religion, and the necessity of forcing this idea upon the entire world. The present Pope has met with almost every religious organization of the world and is inviting everyone to the same religious table. A one-world religion is ready to be established as soon as the Holy Bride of Jesus Christ has been removed out of their way. Bible-believing Christians are a thorn in their flesh, but our bridegroom will remove that thorn at the proper moment. In the meantime, Rick Joyner and others are excited to become part of the Harlot of Rome. It is overwhelming to listen as Rick Joyner tells the story of how he met the Austrian baron that had just come from Kurt Waldheim's office to seek him out and conduct the knighting ceremony. Let's read some detail of that. Please note the name and things I have underlined because I want to speak of them. This is Rick Joyner, quote, I'm sitting in the lobby, Nuremberg, Germany, with Bobby Connor, another NAR guy, and a few other people there, and this guy comes walking in the lobby of the hotel, who was an interesting looking guy, and Reed, who is Paul Cain's assistant, wink wink, was standing behind me, and he said, hey, there's Newman Payton, and this guy was Baron Newman Payton, who Colonel Byrd had told me was looking for me. I said, Reed, do you know that man? He said, oh yeah, we met him years ago. And he came over, walked over to me, and said he had been looking to meet with me. And I stopped him right away. I said, Bobby, give me a readout on this guy. And this guy's going, what's a readout? Ha ha ha, laughter. And Bobby goes, sir, when you came in, I just saw something. I saw that you had just come from the office of a man named Kurt Waldheim. And his eyes got real big, because he had just come from Kurt Waldheim's office. And then he, Bobby Connor, said, I saw you, or I saw him opening this briefcase and giving you something out of it. And Bobby described the briefcase, and his eyes got real big then. He said, this is incredible. He, Baron Peyton, said, that is the only briefcase like that in the world. I had it custom made for Kurt Waldheim, and it was a weird thing Bobby had described. Unquote. Morning Star Ministries, Rick Joyner audio, no date given. It's extremely important to notice two things in the description by Rick Joyner. Upon this man, Baron Newman Peyton, entering the hotel lobby, Rick Joyner asked one of his companions to give him a readout on this man. A readout is another term for what they call a prophecy, or better described as fortune-telling. These men are deep into sorcery, as becomes clear in hearing this entire tape. Also, the man that Baron Newman Peyton had just visited and apparently represented in his approach to Rick Joyner is a notorious individual. Kurt Waldheim is the recently retired president of Austria. He was also an officer in the Nazi army and has been barred from entering the United States since 1987 as a suspected war criminal. The Anti-Defamation League, 1999. Kurt Waldheim was also recently knighted by the Pope, sparking the protest of many Jewish groups. Many believe he is guilty of atrocities against the Jewish people as well as British prisoners of war. The New Republic magazine stated that the knighting of Kurt Waldheim also shows that the hatred of Jews is still no impediment to the esteem of the Church, the Catholic Church. Some say it was Waldheim's only qualification. Connecting this visit to the archives of Nazism and the Knights of Malta, and now to a Nazi war criminal that has recently been knighted by the Catholic Church, shows an emerging picture of anti-Semitism, but it does not end here. A meeting emerged between Paul Cain and Saddam Hussein. If what has already been established is not enough, certainly we all need to add is the entrance of Saddam Hussein into the picture. Saddam Hussein identifies himself as the modern equivalent of Nebuchadnezzar. He is rebuilding the ancient city of Babylon, where the Jews spent 70 years of exile. Also, this city is the center of Revelation chapter 18 and will be the capital of the Antichrist during the tribulation period. Pause, I disagree, but let's go on. The Antichrist is called an Assyrian, placing his origination from the general location of the country of Iraq. The ancient Assyrian nation geographically spread from northern Iran to Lebanon, but the capital was in northern Iraq at Nineveh, modern Mosul. I have personally visited this city. Let's listen as Rick Joyner tells about the arrangement of this meeting. He starts at the point where we just ended in telling of the Baron from Austria being overwhelmed by the fortune-telling expertise of a man with Rick Joyner named Bobby Connor. Please read carefully. Bobby told him a little bit more about the papers and everything it had, and it really got his attention. He was captured from then on, and he was a prophetic man. He was the one who prophesied to Indira Gandhi that if she did not give her heart to the Lord, she would be dead in 1 week. 5 days later, she was assassinated, and he is a friend with head of number of the Muslim nations, as well as other countries, and he's been a prophetic voice to them. But he had never seen the gifts operate like this in such a specific way about details like that, so he was just captured. This worked out strategically in a way you wouldn't believe. It was important, but this was the guy who was key to getting Paul Cain an audience with Saddam Hussein. You may have heard us talk about that, and Paul went. Saddam Hussein, some of his guys had been in a meeting, had seen the prophetic gift operate, and they were utterly convinced that Paul is a true prophet. Saddam became convinced, and he wanted to meet with Paul. Okay, it all worked out. Well, Newman was the guy who worked this out, and right after he sent the fax to start this process, all this fear came on him. What have I done? This could really mess up world events and things like that. He didn't know Paul Cain that well. And right after that, the Lord had told Bobby Conner to fax Newman Payton and just write this, that Paul Cain is my man. He's okay. Don't worry about it, or something like that. So Newman sends this fax to make this connection between Paul and Saddam to work out this thing. And he's sitting there going, oh no, what have I done? Can't get the fax back. Another fax comes in. Don't worry, Paul Cain's okay, you know. I mean, it's exactly on time. They still have the little strips of paper. He sent one. He sent one out. 1 minute later, one comes in. This is it. So these things happen strategically. Anyway, we went on, and a bunch of us got knighted by these Knights of Malta. Okay, I did first. And I wasn't even going to do it. I thought it was a great honor and all, but I just don't join things like that. Anyway, Paul Cain called me from Austria and said, you know, just tuned in on it, and said the Lord is going to give you some credentials like Paul's credentials, where his Roman citizenship really was used at times. And he said, you're really supposed to do this thing. So I did. And then later, some of the other guys, we even got Bobby Conner knighted, and Steve and Leonard. Anyway, we had a big time. Bobby, we dubbed Sir Bubba, and Mahesh became Sir Loin. We seriously polluted the blue blood of Europe. I mean, it was bad. Ricky Skaggs, you know, country singer. Oh man, that was a blast. We had a great time though. Anyway, we got knighted by this thing. It's a real. This somehow is real important to the Lord. He kept this order in existence. I think like he has Israel. It has an end times purpose and destiny. They went on, made me a knight commander, which gave me authority to knight others, and then they made me something else, where I have authority over all the knights supposedly in the U.S. Yeah, right. Audio by Rick Joyner Ministries, no date on tape. This is incredible documentation of what certain personalities in the Charismatic New Wave, New Apostolic Reformation, are willing to do to affect and prepare for the New World Order. To imagine Saddam Hussein calling a charismatic prophet for this prophetic insight is a drawback to ancient rulers and their love for their sorcerers and fortune tellers. It also shows the affinity between Dominion theology and the dreams of Saddam Hussein to be a world dictator. Dominion theology, by its very design, has eliminated the prophetic future of Israel as a nation and the Jews' claim to the promises given to Abraham. The New Wave Charismatics are absolutely in the forefront with Pope John Paul, and now with Pope Francis, right? In helping prepare the stage for the false Christ. It would be impossible to inaugurate a one world order without the religious component. Yes. The political voices from the United Nations Council of Foreign Relations Committee, varying political individuals, all the way to Saddam Hussein, are nurturing the religious contacts and courting every conceivable entity as they jockey for power. When the right man ordained for the hour appears, and God the Father withdraws his hand of restraint, it will all happen with cosmic speed. The players in this article are probably insignificant, but the picture is certainly prophetic.
Run.
What is about? There's something evolving. Whatever may come, the world keeps revolving. They say the next big thing is here, that the revolution's near. But to me it seems quite clear that it's all just a little bit of history repeating.
I am reading a Facebook post from Exhort and Contend. According to this post, this is September 16th, Prayer Vigil in America, this Friday in Los Angeles at historic Angelus Temple at 7 p.m. We need a praying church to rise up. We need God to move in our nation. We need revival. And the screenshot below, Sean Foyt is hosting a prayer vigil for America tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in Los Angeles. Here's a novel idea, Sean. Why don't you host a prayer vigil for the lost? God obviously isn't concerned about saving a particular political system, since he has children around the world who live under various types of governmental systems. What he does care about is souls, Sean, because your spiritual state takes priority over our physical one every single time. Besides leading people astray by having them focus on America rather than souls, Foyt is doing the same by encouraging them to bring flags. He apparently doesn't care to study the Masonic history of the flag, as discussed previously in this post, which includes a video of him telling viewers that his sighting of a bald eagle and a flag was a sign from heaven. America is a false light, a mixture of the sacred and the profane, as this post explains. That we might stay true to Jesus and the Great Commission, dear brethren. I found the fact that it was at Angelus Temple
very interesting.
And I thought, why not look into that a little bit, or learn a little 20th century church history while we're at it. Okay?
From the faith of your fathers, you're drifting away from prayer, drifting away from the Bible reading, drifting away from the family altar, and only ruin and the heartbreak and the home break lay in the direction of backsliding. I am coming out to help bring you back, if I can, to the fold. Give me a burden for souls, Lord. Give me a love for the lost. Let my heart bleed as I own the Lord. Give me a burden for souls.
On New Year's Day, 1923, Angelus Temple, the largest church in the city, opened its doors to the public for the first time. McPherson had managed to raise $300,000 for the grand building, leading one critic to say that Sister Amy had put the cost in Pentecost.
Along about 3 o'clock on Sunday, there would be a line of people down Glendale Boulevard for 2 blocks. And at 5 o'clock, the doors would open, and 5,000 people would course into this building and fill every seat.
McPherson had built one of the first mega-churches in the United States, and she designed it to look more like a place for Hollywood movies than a place of worship.
And in comes Mrs. McPherson with a huge bouquet of roses. And at the moment the crowd sees her, 5,000 people start applauding wildly.
Friends, let's give our lives to Jesus Christ. Let's really become healed in Jesus.
Once on the Angelus Temple stage, Sister Amy used her unique blend of humor, charisma, and storytelling to deliver the age-old evangelical message about salvation through Jesus Christ. Each service built to the same climax, the altar call, or the invitation to come forward and be born again.
Everyone stand. It says, I need Jesus in my life.
Quite often, people that come down, their lives are changed from that very night, and they become a Christian.
Come on, young man. Come on down from that balcony.
She published monthly magazines. And just at the moment when radio was born, she built her own Christian radio station. KFSG broadcast Angelus Temple sermons, healing services instructing listeners to place their hands on their radio sets, and serial dramas such as The Adventures of Jim Trask, Lone Evangelist. Some nights the signal reached as far as Australia.
When she first envisioned the station, she said that there were some 200,000 radio receiving sets in the Los Angeles area. But within just a few years, radio was ubiquitous in nearly every home. and she had the foresight to ride the crest of that wave.
My friends, if you're starving, tonight there's salvation. There's a baptism of the Holy Ghost.
Shortly before she died, Sister Amy applied for a license for an experimental television station. And so had she lived, she surely would have been one of the first televangelists.
I'm on William Branham Historical Research, and this is an article about Amy Semple McPherson. Amy Semple McPherson was the central figure for the Foursquare Church sect of Pentecostalism and the founder of the massive Angelus Temple in Los Angeles. It became America's first true megachurch, attracting 40 million visitors in its first 7 years of operation. Many men responsible for the spreading of William Branham's ministry were either trained by, affiliated with, or working for the Angelus Temple. Leroy Kopp, who promoted William Branham's ministry through the video 20th Century Prophet, was the vice chairman of the Angelus Temple Evangelists. Herrick Holt, president of the Sharon Orphanage, from which the Latter Rain movement promoted and spread William Branham's ministry, was a minister trained by the Foursquare Church. Wesley Swift. Now I'm going to read a little bit about Wesley A. Swift. Wesley A. Swift was one of the original leaders of the racist and anti-Semitic Christian identity doctrine, which William Branham would later rebrand as Serpent Seed. Swift either influenced or worked directly with several men associated with William Branham's ministry, including the Reverend Leroy Kopp, who would become an icon in Branham's message sect for his interview with William Branham in the video 20th Century Prophet. Swift was present at the Little Rock 9 incident in civil rights, which was heavily influenced by Roy E. Davis, original Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Over time, Swift became an authority on the subject of race, and his national lectures and radio broadcasts quickly spread Christian identity theology. It says, when Roy E. Davis, who was the Imperial Wizard, and William D. Upshaw set up their base of operations in San Bernardino, collecting money for the Usher Davis Children's Orphanage that fronted their work towards sparking the third wave of the Ku Klux Klan, Swift was working with Detroit pastor Gerald L.K. Smith to revive the KKK in California. Swift was Smith's bodyguard. When the California Klan became public in April of 1946, Swift took the lead in a cross-burning rally held in the Big Bear Valley. He said, the Klan is here in Big Bear to stay. We intend to form restrictive covenants here and elsewhere in order to hold the line of pure Americanism. It should be noted, shortly prior to the California revival of the Klan, Upshaw held conventions on subjects such as Americanism that will save America, that will save America. And Upshaw was the head of the Department of Americanism in Davis's orphanage that fronted his funding for the Klan. According to witnesses that testified against Upshaw and Davis, Upshaw helped Davis pose as a federal agent to create assumptions of federal authority. Also during this time, Foursquare minister Herrick Holt began raising funds to erect an orphanage in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. Holt was also a leader in the Foursquare Gospel sect, led by Amy Semple McPherson, and began plans to open his Sharon Orphanage in May 1944. In the late 1940s, this orphanage, its leaders, and its students became the flame that ignited William Branham's ministry and his latter rain doctrine. Once it was established, Roy E. Davis, again the Grand Wizard, Roy E. Davis relocated to Fort Worth, Texas, where he would promote Branham's ministry through the Voice of Healing and lead the southern branches of the Ku Klux Klan as the Imperial Wizard of the original Knights of the Ku Klux Klan and the president of the Oak Cliff White Citizens Council. I'll stop there. Here's a nice quote. He said, if you believe the Bible, you are going to be a segregationist. If you believe the Bible, you are not going to work out any deal of coexistence in the devil's kingdom, because your race was sent down here to overthrow it. And Branham said, here not long ago I preached on the subject there in my own hometown. They had them all out, and I preached on the overthrow of the United States government. We give them integration. Now it's worse than it ever was. Wesley Swift, the originator of Branham's serpent seed doctrine, was trained in the Angelus Temple School and was a Foursquare minister. Gerald Burton Winrod was a Wichita, Kansas native nicknamed the Jayhawk Nazi and the Kansas Hitler. Winrod founded the Defenders of the Christian Faith, a fundamentalist Christian fascist organization. Winrod was a primary source of Wesley A. Swift's Christian identity doctrine, which William Branham would later rebrand as the Serpent Seed Doctrine, and appears to be the source of William Branham's position that President Roosevelt was a dictator that caused World War II. In the late 1940s and 50s, Winrod's theology would become a theme in the latter rain and Voice of Healing revivals that would unite to form the post-World War II Healing Revival. Winrod was already a popular name among the Pentecostals, so much so that Amy Semple McPherson appointed Winrod as her replacement when she became too ill to continue preaching. Winrod's leadership of the Angelus Temple led to anti-Nazi protests and bomb threats. Interestingly, it was shortly after Winrod's engagement that William Branham's campaign manager, Gordon Lindsay, was appointed to field position work for the Angelus Temple. Gordon Lindsay toured Canada holding British Israel conferences, helping to spread Winrod's agenda in the years leading up to the Healing Revival. William Branham, leader of the Healing Revival, convinced the masses that communism was invading the church in opposition to his brand of divine healing, and that, as a result, Christian churches, not in his cult following, had become apostates. Winrod frequently attacked the Federation of Churches, claiming that the group had rejected the virgin birth of Christ, both which were also themes used in William Branham's revivals. Winrod preached throughout the country in the late 1920s in everything from conventions for the Christian and Missionary Alliance churches, describing Mussolini's connection to the return of Christ and the end of days. Gerald Burton Winrod, Swift's inspiration and the originator of Branham's 1933 Benito Mussolini prophecy, toured with McPherson.
Of the white supremacy doctrines introduced into American Christianity in the 20th century, the Christian identity doctrine is one of the most destructive. It has been used by hate groups as a basis for discrimination, white supremacists as a justification for murder, and extreme right political activists to push racist agendas for decades. From the Ku Klux Klan to the Aryan nations, many violent hate groups adopted the Christian identity doctrine and weaponized religion against people with black skin. Christian identity doctrine is the belief that the biblical Eve mated with the serpent from the Garden of Eden to produce a cursed and evil bloodline. Wesley Swift popularized the doctrine, teaching white supremacists that the bloodline continued through time to produce Mystery Babylon from the Book of Revelation, and the end of days race war was imminent. According to Swift, that evil bloodline came through Noah's son Ham, which was believed to be the father of the nations of Africa. William Branham further helped spread the doctrine in the 1950s and in the 1960s. As the leader of the post-World War II Healing Revival, Branham rebranded Swift's Christian identity doctrine as Serpent Seed and removed the word black and Jew from the doctrine. Instead, he hinted at people with black skin by claiming, just like Swift, the evil bloodline came through Ham, the son of Noah. Once Serpent Seed was established in the latter-rain revivals, William Branham introduced the racial component into latter-rain theology. Branham called the racial component hybriding and suggested that interracial marriage between blacks and whites would produce a, quote, hybrid, and that hybrid could not enter the kingdom of heaven for several generations. You can learn this and more on william-branham.org.
You know what? Sometimes this is hard, and I feel like a party pooper or Debbie Downer, but I really think it needs to be known. Okay, so this is a video I found. This is from Angelus Temple Sunday worship service, and this is from 14 years ago. I just thought I would talk over it. And I just want to say that I know the people that are participating here and the people that were probably participating in the prayer vigil for America really do not maybe know that the floor they're standing on, there's a basement underneath of it of some really ugly things. And when you compare what was being taught in the times that they were living in back in those days to the current situation with religion and politics and everything, I just have to wonder, is history repeating? I'm just looking at the big picture, and the lady who actually started this church was known for her showbiz antics, and it was the first mega church. It was connected to the Latter Rain and William Branham. And Sean Foyt, who comes from Bethel, which is also connected to all of that. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that everyone involved has an understanding of all this stuff. And to be really honest, if I would have walked into this church 14 years ago, I probably would have thought it was super awesome. So, anyhow, I'm going to add the tail end of this video. One thing leads to another. And the reason is because I included the introduction to the book Weaponized Religion by John Collins, and somebody commented on that video today. I re-listened to it and I was like, that's a great ending because it mentions Amy Semple McPherson and Winrod and Wesley Smith and all those different characters, and I think it's good to know. It gives you a bigger scope, especially of the situation with mixing this like political rally, religious kind of thing together.
The City of Angels, and I want to invite Pastor Matthew Barnett. Can we welcome him to come up here?
Oh, it's so good to be with you guys tonight, and I think you know this or you might not know. You're in one of the most historic places. You talk about the roots of revival. This whole building was built by a woman in the 1920s, Amy Semple McPherson, who came to the city of LA from Canada in her old gospel car, started preaching in Echo Park, and one of the greatest revivals ever seen. This building was built during the Great Depression, and one of the greatest examples of what could happen when someone is available. All this happened. You see the stained glass windows, they'll light up here in a second, but they were donated by the Gypsies, a group of people that were oftentimes cast aside, but she loved them and they donated these. Oh, I mean, you are in a place that is so ripe for something great to happen tonight. And I just want you to catch the spirit of what God is doing. There's great soil and seeds sown in this place. In the 100th year, we're in the 100th year of this place. And so I just think tonight we ought to just give God praise, because you are standing in a very holy ground, because of those who have gone before you, who have paved the way for revival. Come on, let's have a good night tonight, and let's see great things come out of California.
C.S. Lewis once said that almost all crimes of Christian history have come about when religion is confused with politics. Politics, which always runs by the rules of ungrace, allures us to trade away grace for power, a temptation the church has often been unable to resist. And that's Philip Yancey, Christians and Politics, Uneasy Partners. Introduction. I'm just going to read the introduction, and this book is on Amazon, and it's on Kindle, it's on Audible, so you should read it, but this introduction kind of covers some of the main ideas that are in the rest of the book. The latter rain movement of the late 1940s and 50s created a new breed of Pentecostalism that dramatically impacted Christianity in the United States, as well as many other countries around the world. Initially viewed as a movement by God, a number of well-respected men and women participated in the movement during its early years. Over time, however, many of those same men and women came to realize that there were wolves among the sheep. Political ideologies not aligned with sound biblical theology crept into the movement, causing the group to explode into several splinter groups. New sects were created, and while some of them reformed, others became very destructive and militant. Such is the case with Paul Schaefer Schneider, leader of the Colonia Dignidad compound in Chile. In March 2005, Paul Schaefer was found hiding in the expensive gated community of Las Acacias, about 25 miles from Buenos Aires, Argentina. He had been on the run for nearly 8 years and was extradited to Chile to face an array of charges, from the rape and torture of children to his involvement with the 1976 disappearance of political activist Juan Mano. 2 months later, after his Pentecostal community was raided by government officials, it was discovered that the men and women dressed in the style of Pentecostal holiness fashion had been manufacturing, selling, and using weapons, including sarin gas, all from what appeared to be a humble religious community. Schaefer was the leader of a splinter group of The Message, the cult following of William Marion Branham, aka William Marvin Branham, from Jeffersonville, Indiana. In the early 1950s, German Baron Frere von Blomberg became one of William Branham's campaign managers and organized a tour through Germany. Von Blomberg was a strong supporter of Branham's anti-communist revivals due to the horrific things that Russian soldiers did to his family. Branham went to Germany, and Baron von Blomberg helped William Branham establish a series of 15 offices in Sweden, Finland, Germany, Africa, Norway, Belgium, France, and 2 in Canada. Paul Schaefer, the infamous leader of Colonia Dignidad, was assigned to be William Branham's security detail. Schaefer was recruited into the Message cult and became programmed to believe Branham's end-of-days prophecies, as well as his misogynistic and abusive doctrines. These were the same years that Reverend Jim Jones, who created a similar compound in South America, was rising to become a leader in Branham's Message sect. Okay, pause. I'm pausing myself. So let's get this straight. Colonia Dignidad, a Nazi torture compound in South America in Chile, and Jonestown in Guyana by Jim Jones were both related to William Branham. But will the NAR tell you that? This is critically important for understanding Schaefer's authoritative control over his sect, as this was during the early years of Branham's manifested Sons of God theology. Pause. Which also is espoused by people like Lance Wallnau and Mike Bickle and all these other guys. Unpause. Branham had recruited Jones into a militant version of Pentecostal extremism referred to as Joel's Army, a group of extremists on domestic terrorism watch lists such as the Southern Poverty Law Center prior to 1963. This theology empowered numerous ministers with authoritarian control by manipulating congregants to believe that the deity was speaking directly to them as the spoken word or the voice of God through superhuman central figures. Sound familiar? Bob Jones and Schaefer used this to their both Jones, Jim Jones, and Schaefer used this to their advantage, and because of this, many of their congregants were either murdered or sacrificed their lives. As the investigation into Schaeffer's cult compound continued, the level of domestic and international crimes discovered was mind-boggling. The cult compound had harbored Nazi leaders fleeing to South America, and Colonia Dignidad became known as the colony to fleeing Nazis. The CIA and Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal claimed to have evidence that Hitler's angel of death, Joseph Mengele, spent time in Colonia Dignidad. Message believers in Colonia Dignidad began torturing and killing everyone from opponents of the current political regime to children who disobeyed Branham's cult rules. They were also manufacturing and stockpiling weapons of war. During their searches of the compound, officials found surface-to-air missiles, rocket launchers, machine guns, submachine guns, hand and cluster grenades, rifles, anti-personnel mines, automatic pistols, and a large amount of ammunition. Officials found traces of sarin gas and learned that the message believers were manufacturing chemical and biological weapons. Also found were 500 files on people who had been assassinated in Chile, from political leaders to entertainers. One file had the name John F. Kennedy on it, and inside were 2 bullets of the same caliber rifle used by Lee Harvey Oswald during the assassination of JFK. Boy. As historical analysts began to examine the many unusual details of the compound and began interviewing cult members, it became apparent that those participating had undergone a deep level of mind control and were being manipulated through Schaeffer's religious practices. Schaeffer had used a weaponized version of religion, and it had the power to overthrow the Chilean government and to install the ruthless dictator Augusto Pinochet into power. Like Hitler controlled Nazi Germany, and with the help of many high-ranking Nazi officials, Schaeffer was able to convince cult members to brutally torture political opponents. At the same time, Schaeffer was molesting Chilean boys, and the cult physician prescribed sedatives to assist in the sexual abuse when they resisted. Colonia Dignidad was therefore also one of the most ruthless places of detention for political prisoners in Chile. New bunkers, long underground tunnels, and laboratories very similar to those of Auschwitz were born inside. According to the most recent documents, the well-known Nazi doctor Joseph Mengele also found hospitality in the structure. Psychedelic drugs were tested on inmates, and electroshock was common. In addition, the effect of sarin gas was also examined in the secret basement of the concentration camp. Those who died joined the long list of disappeared and ended up in mass graves. Yet what Schaeffer was able to achieve in Chile was not unique or unusual. The message cult and its doctrine had enabled leaders of other splinter groups around the world to do the same. Branham cult leader Robert Martin Gumbura, for example, established a Pentecostal military compound in Zimbabwe that nearly overthrew the Zimbabwe government. Like Schaeffer, Gumbura was involved in sexual crimes, some of which were based on William Branham's serpent seed and polygamous theology. The end-time message dictates various disturbing beliefs, which include claims that women are inferior to men, all because the first female, Eve, in the book of Genesis had intercourse with a live snake, producing a half-serpent, half-human child, Esau. That makes no sense. They also hold that their church founder, William Marion Branham, is the last prophet of the New Testament. This revelation comes shortly after end-time message pastor Robert Gumbura, who had 13 wives, was slapped with a half-a-century jail term for having raped several women last year. Gumbura was running his own sidekick, but utilizing the same religious poison that demeans women and claims that women are responsible for the mankind's fall, and so a man can marry as many women as he wishes. There are hundreds, possibly thousands of groups that splintered from William Branham's post-World War II healing revivals. Pause. All those healing revivals that they teach you about that were so great with Oral Roberts and a whole bunch of other people. Paul Cain, who's connected to Mike Bickle and IHOP. That's why we're reading this. I'm sorry. Those whose lineage branched directly from any of the original versions of William Branham's cult of personality seem to wander further into extremism than the more distant splinter groups, but with the vastly different versions of doctrine used by different versions of William Branham's stage persona, the spider web of siblings and cousins to the group seem countless. Collectively, they are called the New Apostolic Reformation, nicknamed the Christian Taliban. Looking the opposite direction in history, however, prior to William Branham's leadership in the post-World War II healing revival, the doctrinal genealogy looks much the same. There was nothing that William Branham introduced that was new. Every version of doctrine that was introduced as new by Branham came from other sources that were influential among Branham's peers. Even the serpent seed doctrine, which would cause over 300 ministers to denounce William Branham after an event hosted by Jim Jones in Chicago. A doctrine many believe to have been Branham's own creation, was a rebranding of the Christian identity doctrine of one-time Angelus Temple minister Reverend Wesley A. Swift under the manipulation of cult leader Amy Semple McPherson. Also touted as some God's general or something with these gnarly types. All their generals and heroes are psychos. I'm just saying. Somebody name me one that's not a psycho. I'm sorry. According to Swift, the serpent in the Garden of Eden mated with Eve to produce Cain, and from Cain there came all races with black skin. Swift's theology was weaponized by white supremacists during the 1950s and 60s in the battle against civil rights. Branches from the Christian identity tree include the neo-Nazi Aryan nations and other hate groups. Though Branham convinced his cult of personality that the doctrine was original and given to him by divine revelation, many of his mentors, peers, and contemporaries have the same revelation. Once integrated into their theology, it became a weaponized form of religion targeting people with black skin. Yet Wesley Swift did not create the notion that the biblical mother of all living had sexual affair with an animal. Before the Christian identity doctrine took its form and became popularized and weaponized in the United States, British Israelism was used to target Jewish people. According to British Israelism, the offspring of Eve and the serpent were the Jews that we see today, and the people of Great Britain are genetically, racially, and linguistically the direct descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. This was the theology weaponized by Adolf Hitler. Oops, I said the name. By Adolf Hitler during the Holocaust. In his book Mein Kampf, Hitler stated, "The nationalization of our masses will succeed only when, aside from all the positive struggle for the soul of our people, their international poisoners are exterminated. If at the beginning of the war and during the war 12 or 15,000 of these Hebrew corrupters of the nation had been subjected to poison gas, such as had been endured in the fields by hundreds of thousands of our very best German workers of all classes and professions, then the sacrifice of millions at the front would not have been in vain." Wow. Looking back through time at the horrific extinction of Jewish people at the hands of the Germans in Nazi concentration camps, and now understanding Adolf Hitler's deep burning hatred for Jewish people, one would assume that only a very small minority of people in the United States would have agreed with Adolf Hitler before, during, and after World War II. The sad truth is that with the exception of murder and genocide, many Pentecostals and fundamentalists in the United States were in full agreement. So much so that Gerald Burton Winrod, the Jawhawk Nazi, and Kansas Itlerhay, built an entire religious organization on that very premise. Winrod was so popular among fundamentalists that F. Bosworth, William Branham's spiritual mentor in the post-World War II healing revival, invited Winrod to submit articles for his Exploits of the Faith magazine. Paul Rader, the second president of the Christian and Missionary Alliance, held conferences with Winrod, some of which opened at the Cadle Tabernacle, Indiana, Klan headquarters. Rader was a member of Winrod's Defenders of the Christian Faith movement. Gordon Lindsay, Branham's first campaign manager, was a member of the Anglo-Saxon Christian World Movement, a British Israelism organization. During World War II, this movement was weaponized politically against Franklin D. Roosevelt. Religious leaders began openly declaring the Jewish race to be the cause of communism and that Jews were working with Russia to invade the religious and political systems of the United States. The weaponized doctrine quickly spread through fundamentalist Christianity, leading to a severe impact on the morale of the United States military. Most of the people organizing the effort were from California, and in Los Angeles during December of 1941, a series of mock trials impeaching Roosevelt were held, mixing politics, religion, and anti-Semitism. Through British Israelism, weaponized religion began to undermine government systems. This led to the Great Sedition Trial of 1944. Ironically, not only was weaponized religion used against the United States government, but Richard Nixon also recognized the level of influence achieved by the groups involved and chose to use weaponized religion. Do you think that might still be happening today? By many of the same groups involved in or connected to defendants of the sedition trial of 1944. To spread domestic fear of communism in the United States by using members of the Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship International. FGB-MFI was founded by Demos Shakarian. Get this, guys. Get this. Demos Shakarian, the nephew of the Kardashian family, patriarch Tados Kardashian. The Kardashians and Shakarians sponsored William Branham's revivals in 1947. Yeah, the Kardashians. Like Kim Kardashian? Okay, sorry. The Kardashians and the Shakarians sponsored William Branham's revivals in 1947, and William Branham is photographed attending the Full Gospel Businessmen's International Convention, where then Vice President Nixon appealed to the weaponized religion to help fight the greatest battle ever fought, the Battle of the Minds. Now, in the National Security Council, we consider, of course, the military policy, the economical policy, the political policies that the United States can adopt to meet this threat. But all of us know that the great battle in which we are engaged today is one which is not only military, economic, and political in character, but that in the final analysis, it is a battle for the minds and the hearts and the souls of men. I think I'll check, but that's Nixon. Yeah, Richard Nixon. The group's success is not only evident from the historic fears of communism that spread throughout the United States through religious propaganda, but also from the fact that Richard Nixon engaged the group once more when he became president. Specifically, Nixon engaged Branham's splinter group in Chile, Paul Schaefer's Colonia Dignidad compound. Declassified documents confirm that Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Carter were all in collaboration with the Pinochet regime from 1973 to 1981. After a meeting held between Chilean media tycoon Agustin Edwards, Pepsi-Cola owner Donald Kendall, and the CIA, the United States Attorney General convinced Nixon to form a task force for staging a military coup in Chile. The CIA worked directly with DINA, Pinochet's intelligence agency, which used Colonia Dignidad as a national intelligence training center run by Germans. It was the central receiver of all the information from the external apparatus of DINA.
But what I'm believing for is a generation. A generation will rise up with a corporate faith, a corporate anointing to press into realms, because it's my conviction that as much as God put on a William Branham, 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 or a Catherine Kuhlman.
Several years ago, I was laying on the floor, I think it may have been in a prayer chapel, and it's asking God if I could have the mantle of William Branham. I just got done, in fact, Bill has a series old videos of William Branham, and I just
talking about him. I'm talking about many men and women in the past. William Branham had a gift of a word of knowledge that was so scary. It was so scary.
Oh, yes, here he is. Bless the Lord. I said to him, I said, you know, I'm a student of the healing revival, and one of the men that was noted in that revival was William Branham, who gave the prophecy about the 7 things that would happen in the last days, and all of them have been accurate up to now. And this is the grave of William Branham.
William Branham, same thing. He experienced the third dimension where God used him in such ways. I have videos of it, and I sit and tremble watching that man being used. Details about people, I mean details. William Branham is his name. William Branham was preaching, my dear, when a halo appeared over his head, preaching in Louisiana. You can look him up on YouTube, it'll shake you up.
It's a great movement released in America in 1948. It really started in 1946. The day was May the 7th, 1946, today. May the 7th, 1946, an angel appeared to a prophet by the name of William Branham. And he said, you're going to be a part of one of the greatest healing movements and harvest and miracles that the world has seen since the day of Pentecost. And it's in the history books. My wife said,
Getting a hope from God. To be able to see, to discern the times and the seasons that's ahead of you. And the thing about the elephant, it wasn't just an ordinary elephant, it was a wild elephant, a wild elephant. It was radical, 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 radical.
I've said, God, welcome to my world where it's naturally supernatural. Have you ever heard of a man by the name of William Branham? He had, without a doubt, since the days that Jesus walked in the flesh, the greatest miracle ministry I ever read about.
I hear the Lord talking to me about something. All right, come on, Billy Ray. Come on. There was an angel that used to stand beside William Branham. William Branham. William Branham.
Was it a demon? Because William Branham he denied the doctrine of the Trinity. That makes him a heretic.
And when that angelic being was present, everyone was healed that history too. The Lord said that was a taste of what he is going to do with his body. With his body. With his body.
Run.
I am reading a blog post from Fanatic for Jesus. This is Wednesday, November 16th, 2011. The Christian Right in the Nazi Underground. No way. Piecing it together. There is a saying that those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. To provide an example of how this is playing out in our world today, watch the first few minutes of this video.
Of Adolf Hitler?
No.
You don't know who he is?
No.
I'm Ray Comfort. I'm Jewish, and I'm deeply concerned that a generation is forgetting one of the greatest tragedies in the history of the human race. Adolf Hitler sanctioned the murder of 11 million people, including 6 million Jews, through what's commonly called the Holocaust. In Germany, statues of Hitler are forbidden, and his Nazi salute is illegal. And in Austria, if you even deny the Holocaust took place, they'll throw you in jail. Germany so wants to keep alive the memory of that horror, it has mandatory Holocaust education for its children. This is because it's been rightly said that those who forget history are destined to repeat it. Adolf Hitler, what do you know about him?
He was, what's it called? But he was kind of a president.
What do you know about Adolf Hitler?
I really don't know anything about it.
Have you heard of Adolf Hitler?
No.
Never heard of him?
No.
I vaguely remember him.
Who was Adolf Hitler?
He was the guy that's in, was he German?
I really don't know that much about him.
Who was Adolf Hitler?
This guy with the had a mustache.
Who was Adolf Hitler?
He was a communist, right, leader of Germany.
Who was Adolf Hitler?
I don't know.
You have no idea at all?
No.
He was a communist.
Is he like a actor or someone?
He's like something about Holocaust. So tell me what you know about Adolf Hitler.
I don't know anything about him.
You ever heard of him?
No, I haven't.
Who's the guy with the mustache?
Don't know, I'm sorry.
You're about to meet Steve. As you'll see, Steve is a self-proclaimed neo-Nazi who loves Adolf Hitler, hates Jews, and people of dark skin.
White people are up here, and then there's the Jews. So the white man is the best man.
What's the purpose of man's existence?
To get drunk and have a blue mohawk.
You will see that not only have we forgotten history, but it will also become apparent that much has been kept secret in a way that has led all of us to be deeply deceived. Many of these secrets and acts of darkness are beginning to be exposed for all to see. The Bible says, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come to light." Ephesians 5:11 then says that these acts of darkness should be exposed. So this is exactly what I plan to do. When you see how these hidden acts by politicians and so-called Christians have blended, and how they will create further deception in the future, it will become obvious why the Bible says that believers are to remain separate from the politics of this world. 2 Corinthians 6:15 and 7:1. We are now paying the penalty for crossing the line. In a recent article titled "Hitler's Masquerade as a Christian," there are many parallels in the strategy used by Hitler and the political right-wing leaders of present day. We learned that the Roman Catholic Church, although they said they were placed in a difficult position, befriended Hitler and were notorious Nazi sympathizers. His political message to the German people was that he wanted to preserve and defend those basic principles on which Germany was built. Make Germany great again. He regarded Christianity as the foundation for national morality. Does this message sound familiar to what is being stated today by the politically motivated Christian right? Are we waiting for another dictator to come forward, foolishly supported by the sheeple? Defining terms. Before I answer that question, let's learn where today's Christian right comes from. Christian Reconstructionist leaders of the 20th century, such as Dr. Jerry Falwell, Dr. D. James Kennedy, Pat Robertson, and Francis Schaeffer, brought Bible believers together in a movement that formed the Christian right. Each leader, being from a different realm of Christianity, were essentially fundamentalist Bible believers. They supported socially conservative policies and created several politically oriented groups to become more vocal, thus influencing the laws in the United States. They also rejected liberal modernist theology, which was beginning to spread through the churches. The religious right is made up of a broader spectrum of citizens, which includes Christians, Muslims, and Orthodox Jews. To the revolutionary, it was a way to convince faithful believers to get involved in social change using political channels in order to reach a political goal. Over time, the religious right movement successfully caught on. Christians represented in government. As time progressed, many of the Christian right leaders found positions in the government. Many presented in the following video are members of the Council for National Policy, the conservative version of the globalist agency Council on Foreign Relations. Some of their surface beliefs are biblical, but many of their views are based upon Reconstructionist dominion theology, which is not the traditional interpretation of the Bible.
I'm sick and tired of hearing about all of the radicals and the perverts and the liberals and the leftists and the communists coming out of the closet. It's time for God's people to come out of the closets, out of the churches, and change America.
Our form of government came directly from the Bible. There is no question about it.
We have a threefold primary responsibility. Number one, get people saved. Number two, get them baptized. Number three, get them registered to vote.
When two people in a family become absolutely legally equal, there is no head. Both become independent of each other, and love is destroyed.
Of course, we had prayer in the schools until 1962, and this country, in a lot of ways, was a lot better off before 1962.
I agree with capital punishment, and I believe that homosexuality is one of those that could be coupled with murder and other sins. It would be the government that sits upon this land who would be executing the homosexuals.
Reverend Falwell, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to be with so many who firmly believe that the answers to the world's problems can be found in the Word of God.
In the 1980s, many believed the religious right had reached the pinnacle of power and influence. Their extremist agenda helped shape election outcomes and steered policy at the highest levels of government. But as the 1980s ended, scandal and corruption closed in. For a time it seemed that their moment in history had come and gone. But the religious right did not go away, far from it. They were grooming for a political comeback in the 1990s. The religious right that took center stage at the Houston Convention is stronger, more sophisticated, more powerful than ever. Just 2 days after the convention, President Bush made a campaign stop at the Religious Roundtable rally in Dallas. Their message hasn't changed. It's the same relentless drumbeat of intolerance and hate.
There is a religious war going on in this country. It is a cultural war as critical to the kind of nation we shall be as the Cold War itself. For this war is for the soul of America.
I was struck by the fact that the other party took words to put together their platform, but left out three simple letters, G-O-D.
To me and to most Republicans, traditional values start with faith in Almighty God. And that is why we do not take God out of the Republican Party platform.
The platform committee of the Republican Party is pretty well congruent with everything we as Christians believe and teach and practice.
Take the issue of whether parents should be able to choose the best school for their kids
My opponent says that's okay, as long as the school is run by government, and I say every parent and child should have a real choice of schools, public, private, or religious.
We won a battle in the fight to save the lives of unborn babies. This is the first battle in the effort to give us a pro-life president in the post-Bush era in 1996.
I think of Justices Souter and Kennedy and Justice O'Connor, who voted against us on that decision and on the abortion decision. The thought struck me that these must be the only three people in America who don't understand why they were put on the Supreme Court.
I sometimes think that the liberals are always so angry because they believe the grandiose promises of the liberation movements. They're disappointed because most women do not wish to be liberated from their essential natures as women.
Americans try to raise their children to understand right and wrong, only to be told that every so-called lifestyle alternative is morally equivalent. That is wrong.
In the name of safe sex, the amount of money being spent by the federal government, not just on AIDS, but on safe sodomy subsidies, has risen from something like $34 million in 1984 to $4.9 billion a year today.
You see the pink triangles that they wear, a lot of these AIDS carriers, and they say that the reason they wear these pink triangles is because the homosexuals were forced to wear them in the Nazi death camps. The reality is the Nazi movement, the New World Order of its day, was put on the map by militant homosexuals. We are facing a new type of Gestapo. We are facing a home-intern or a homosexual Gestapo, which will break the back of every church, and that is their goal, which opposes them.
Yet a militant leader of the homosexual rights movement could say, Bill Clinton and Al Gore represent the most pro-lesbian and pro-gay ticket in history, and so they do.
And on behalf of family values, we've taken on Hollywood and the media elite, and we will not back down.
Abortion on demand, a litmus test for the Supreme Court, homosexual rights, discrimination against religious schools, women in combat units. That's change, all right, but that's not the kind of change America needs. It's not the kind of change America wants, and it's not the kind of change we can abide in a nation we still call God's country.
It is no slogan that America remains the most resolutely religious nation on God's great earth. And it is no slogan to say that America will always occupy a special place in God's heart.
Nazism and the Christian right. Nazism, fascism, the New Age movement, the religious right, neoconservatives, and dominionism are woven together and interconnected. Although they all seem as though they are separate, they are being orchestrated to create a great global oneness. Each by itself has its own teaching of unity and oneness, and together they will become as one. The motivating influence and future objectives of the Christian right will become clearer. The Christian right is not Christian, rather a tool used as a launching point to future occult objectives. There's Madame Blavatsky. Pieces of the puzzle. In the book, The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, Constance McCumbee proves that New Age movement is Nazism. The Nazi movement, particularly Adolf Hitler, was heavily influenced by the Russian-born mystic Helena Blavatsky, 1831 to 1891, founder of the Theosophical Society. She is the figure who looms large behind some of the defining actions and beliefs of the Nazi Party. In 1899, Blavatsky publicly declared that the purpose of establishing the society, the Theosophical Society, was to prepare humanity for the reception of a world teacher. It would be a spiritual leader, the Maitreya, who would appear on Earth in order to direct the evolution of humankind. A second purpose would be to open the door to occult teachings throughout the Western world. Blavatsky said in her writing, "The religion of the ancients is the religion of the future. A few centuries more, and there will linger no more sectarian belief in either of the great religions of humanity." In other words, the goal was to unify the religions of the world and create a one-world government. And this is their logo. There is no religion higher than truth. The family, also known as the Fellowship, is a religious and political organization for the political elite based in Washington, D.C., which was founded by Abraham Varied, that's how I'm saying it, Varied, in the 1930s. They were pro-Hitler and recruited several Nazis to serve U.S. intelligence positions after World War II. The association with the Nazis helped to pave the way for the direction the family would go in the coming years.
In his recent book, The Family, Jeff Charlotte told the inside story of a movement of a self-described Christian mafia, the oldest and most influential religious right organization in America.
Leader of the group says, the more invisible you can make your organization, the more influence it will have.
There's a little-known organization in Washington with a worldwide reach.
Over the years, the family's power and fundamentalism grew in concert with America's religious right. But by 2009, scandals had exposed the family.
Last year, I had an affair.
In C Street, the fundamentalist threat to American democracy, Charlotte will take advantage of the sunlight cast on the C Street house to answer the questions of how political fundamentalism endures in America and why it is as big a threat to open democracy as ever.
Through the family, he had learned the meaning of bipartisanship. He said, it's that Jesus didn't come to take sides, he came to take over.
In C Street, we will meet the professional friends who guide the faith of the elite and the fundamentalist front that is fighting spiritual war to reclaim territory for Christ within the U.S. military. C Street, like K Street, Washington's notorious lobbying corridor, is about influence, its consequences, and its justifications. The family was history. C Street is right now. Welcome to C Street.
After World War II, the family and Varied convinced political elite agent John J. McCloy to cancel the denazification program in Germany. Although the Nazi war machine was eliminated, those who believed in their philosophies continued to live on. The family was nurtured financially and organizationally by the military order Knights of Malta, a Vatican-based secret society known for aiding Nazi fascists. The Order of Malta is one of the oldest religious Catholic orders and is controlled by the Jesuits. One of their goals is to restore the Protestant Church back under the primacy of the Pope, to create a one-world religion that would be ushered in by the New Age Antichrist, or the New Age Christ. Also, I did a video on Rick Joyner, Knight of Malta. Oh well. One of the Nazis recruited by the family was General Reinhard Gehlen, former head of Nazi Eastern Front intelligence. For his work as a double-agent spy, he received a pension from both the German and the U.S. government. Here he is, General Reinhard Gehlen in his Knights of Malta uniform. Also, there was General Manfred Zapp, who was in the Ministry of Propaganda for the Nazi war machine. He would network with the American elite since he was the New York representative of the Transocean News Service of Berlin. And this is Manfred Zapp, Nazi agent. Two of Varied's closest German allies, Manfred Zapp and Baron Ulrich von Genonth, were deported from America after being exposed as Nazi spies. Genonth was the Gestapo's representative at the U.S. Embassy in the late 1930s. responsible for providing covert support to German undercover agents in America. This is all a matter of simple historical record. Indeed, Zapp and Guinanth were both front-page news when they were caught. If they were Christians, they forgot to mention it in their correspondence, which revolves chiefly around lobbying, varied successfully for support of German industrial titans. This is Baron Ulrich von Guinanth, possibly on the far left, was head of the Gestapo in the United States. Picture was taken in Richmond, Virginia. Another associate of Varied was the German Nazi philosopher Martin Heidegger, a colleague of Leo Strauss, the father of American neoconservatism. Because Heidegger was Jewish, he was forced to emigrate to the United States, where he eventually began teaching neoconservative political science at the University of Chicago. It is this merging of right-wing philosophies that provided a political bridge between the modern-day Christian right, including Christian Zionists, and the secular-oriented neoconservatives who support a policy that sees the U.S.-Israel alliance against Islam and European-oriented democratic socialism. For the Dominion theologists, the United States is the new Israel, with a God-given mandate to establish dominion over the entire planet. Neither the secular neoconservatives nor Christian fundamentalists seem to have a problem with the idea of American domination of the planet, as witnessed by the presence of representatives from both camps as supporters of the neoconservative project for a new American century. The neoconservative blueprint for America's attack on Iraq and plans to attack, occupy, and dominate other countries that oppose U.S. designs. In the following video, that I hope is still there, Ron Paul describes the mission of the neoconservatives. Although he doesn't mention the importance Israel plays, we certainly can fill in the blank. And this project for the New American Century, that's when they said America needs a new Pearl Harbor, and then 9/11 happened. Okay, let's see if it works. Shit. The last important Nazi varied saved, and I haven't mentioned all of them, was Hermann Abs, known as Hitler's banker. Abs would become vice president of Varied's International Christian Leadership. Varied's prayer breakfast movement, pro-Nazi German groups like the Bund, and a resurgent Ku Klux Klan had more than propaganda in common. They had an interlocking leadership and a coordinated political agenda. In the following video, you will see footage of the family from the past and present. Really? Much more info here. It's from Armor of Truth, link below. It's really long, but it goes into lots of details about all this stuff. According to Jeff Charlotte's book, Between Cold War Establishment and the Religious Fervor of Abraham Varied and His Allies, organizations that came of age in the post-war era were the National Association of Evangelicals, Campus Crusade, the Billy Graham Crusade, Youth for Christ, the Navigators, and many more. Charlotte says that Nazi agent Manfred Zapp had an influence on some of these organizations. Each was created to be ecumenical. Great. With each organization being helped by founders of ministries already founded. For example, the original board members of the Campus Crusade included Henrietta Mears, who groomed Bill Bright for ministry, Billy Graham, Knight of Malta, Dawson Trotman, Navigators, Dan Fuller, founder of Fuller Theological, J. Edwin Orr, Fuller Theological. They promote Christian unity between denominations, but ecumenism is a strategy to achieve dominion over all religions. The Knights of Malta Jesuit plan was put into place to deceive the sheeple to become as one. If you do research into any of these Christian organizations, you will find that many of the individuals who founded these ministries were either Knights of Malta, Masons, or secret society. Freemasonry is a secret society which is based on the ancient mystery religions of Babylon and the worship of Lucifer. In the past few years or so, many of these Christian organizations are no longer defending the inerrant word of God, and we are beginning to see a more visible alliance with the New Age. Isn't that the truth? This is 10, 11 years ago. For example, in the following video, well-respected Billy Graham, only by those who don't know the truth, is no longer hiding his New Age beliefs. This is an important point, since he founded one of the largest evangelical organizations in the world, the Lausanne Movement. It has adopted many New Age terms and a major proponent of the contemplative prayer movement.
Tell me, what do you think is the future of Christianity?
I think everybody that loves Christ or knows Christ, whether they're conscious of it or not, they're members of the body of Christ. And that's what God is doing today. He's calling people out of the world for his name, whether they come from the Muslim world or the Buddhist world or the Christian world or the non-believing world. They are members of the body of Christ because they've been called by God. They may not even know the name of Jesus, but they know in their heart that they need something that they don't have, and they turn to the only light that they have, and I think that they are saved and they're going to be with us in heaven.
This is fantastic. I'm so thrilled to hear you say that. There's a wideness in God's mercy.
There is. There definitely.
Strive to enter through the narrow door, for many, I tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able. When once the master of the house has risen and shut the door, and you begin to stand outside and to knock at the door, saying, Lord, open to us, then he will answer you, I do not know where you come from.
Back to the family. According to Jeff Charlotte, the phrase Jesus plus nothing was conceived by Doug Coe, the successor of Abraham Varied. Coe's usage of the phrase is vastly different than the traditional meaning, and it has been adopted by many evangelicals today. Those who are within the inner circle of the family believe in the Trinity and the person of Christ. There is no mention of the Father and the Holy Spirit, since Coe feels it clutters the message. But the truth is that the only message being preached there is one to total commitment to the cause, just as the followers of Jesus were committed to the cause. He is more interested in how they are the chosen or elect, so that they can carry out the revolution. In their faithfulness to the cause, there is no need for becoming a new creation in Christ. This would mean that the Christian part of the family is all a front. The family and the Institute for Noetic Sciences, which is one of the most all-time powerful New Age organizations, have intertwined core leadership and financing. The Institute of Noetic Sciences is tied to New Age leader Barbara Marx Hubbard and the UFO Disclosure Project. The UFO Disclosure Project's founder is related to the Rockefeller family, which gives more credibility to the UFO plan. Z Services, LLC, formerly known as Blackwater Worldwide, is part of the Carlyle Group's military-industrial complex. Eric Prince took a behind-the-scenes role in the company after 9/11, is a member of the Knights of Malta, and he has connections to the Republican Party through his late father. His father, auto parts magnate Edgar Prince, was instrumental in the creation of the Family Research Council, one of the Christian right groups most influential with the George W. Bush administration. At Eric's father's funeral in 1995, he was eulogized by two supporters of the Christian conservative movement, James Dobson and Gary Bauer, both kingpins. In the following video, the activity of Prince and the Christian right players are exposed in a report by MSNBC.
For the last 3 nights, we have been quoting the sworn declaration of a former executive for XE, a company formerly called Blackwater, in which that executive describes a nearly global enterprise shot through with criminality, arms dealing, fraud, tax evasion, child prostitution, murder, all of which Z denies, even in cases where its employees have already pleaded guilty. One motive for all this, the 4-year executive claims, was greed. Tonight, in our third story, the other motive was God. Jeremy Scahill, who first broke this story for The Nation magazine, wrote the definitive book on Blackwater in which he details some of the theocratic connections of founder Eric Prince. Now that former Blackwater executive, known only as John Doe No. 2, claims that Prince did more than subscribe to a fundamentalist Christian ideology. He used Z to advance it. Quote, Mr. Prince is motivated to engage in misconduct by two factors. First, he views himself as a Christian crusader, tasked with eliminating Muslims and the Islamic faith from the globe. To that end, Mr. Prince intentionally deployed to Iraq certain men who shared his vision of Christian supremacy, knowing and wanting these men to take every available opportunity to murder Iraqis. Many of these men used call signs based on the Knights of the Templar, the warriors who fought the Crusades. As a young man, Eric Prince was an intern for the first President Bush and for the Family Research Council, the right-wing religious organization his father helped to start. He later complained about his White House internship. Quote, I saw a lot of things I did not agree with. Homosexual groups being invited in, the budget agreement, the Clean Air Act. A Catholic convert, Prince has donated more than $250,000 to conservative Republican politicians, primarily the religious ones. He has used the wealth of his family and profits from Z to create and to fund numerous right-wing and or proselytizing Christian organizations, the Family Research Council, Christian Freedom International, and the Council on National Policy, whose meetings Prince said he has attended. That last group, the CNP, was founded by this man, the Reverend Tim LaHaye, whose Left Behind series dramatizes his biblical beliefs that in the near future, Solomon's temple in Israel will be rebuilt. Jesus then returns, making true believers vanish away with him. Those left behind who accept Jesus battle the unbelievers. Mr. Prince's devout family values Christianity does not always manifest itself, however, in his behavior. After a Z, then Blackwater plane went down in Afghanistan, Prince argued that legal immunity pertained because companies cannot be sued for the actions of their employees under prevailing Afghanistan law, specifically the Islamic law of Sharia. Prince was interviewed by Suzanne Simons for a new book about him, a book that reports Prince cheated on his first wife, his dying first wife, with their nanny. Simons writes that the nanny attended the funeral while pregnant with Prince's child. Prince did, in his words, the right thing. He married the nanny. At Z, Prince has surrounded himself with like-minded believers like the lobbyist Paul Behrens, board member of Christian Freedom International, and General Counsel COO Joseph Schmitz. As Inspector General at the Pentagon, Mr. Schmitz incorporated the phrase, always under the protection of the Almighty, into the official seal and said, quote, we pride ourselves on our strict adherence to the rule of law under God.
Ha 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 ha.
He spoke to the Order of Malta, a secretive Catholic group at the Church of Paul Bremer, another conservative Catholic in the Bush administration, and Schmitz essentially exonerated U.S. General William Boykin for turning his mission missionary. After even Republicans slammed Schmitz for shielding the White House from congressional scrutiny of Pentagon purchasing, Schmitz resigned and went to Blackwater. Schmitz not only spoke to the Order of Malta, he is a member. Scahill reports the order is, quote, a Christian militia formed in the 11th century before the First Crusades with the mission of defending territories that the Crusaders had conquered from the Muslims, territories familiar to theocratic minds.
We are the Knights who say...
No, not the Knights who say ni.
The same.
Who are they?
We are the keepers of the sacred words. Ni, peng, and ni-wom.
Those who hear them seldom live to tell the tale.
The Knights who say ni demand a sacrifice.
Knights of Ni, we are but simple travelers who seek the enchanter who lives beyond these woods.
We shall say ni again to you if you do not appease us.
Well, what is it you want?
We want a shrubbery.
A what? Please, please, no more. We will find you a shrubbery.
You must return here with a shrubbery, or else you will never pass through this wood alive.
Oh, Knights of Ni, you are just and fair, and we will return with a shrubbery.
One that looks nice.
Of course.
And not too expensive.
Yes.
Now, go!
This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while.
The Pentagon put Bible verses on its reports for Mr. Bush. Some of his soldiers spoke openly about distributing Bibles in Iraq and Afghanistan, spreading the word. Eric Prince once described Z employees this way, quote, everybody carries guns, just like Jeremiah rebuilding the temple in Israel, a sword in one hand, a trowel in the other. The temple that must be rebuilt for Jesus to return. Bush officials helped Prince advance his vision. State Department Inspector General Alvin Krongard killed a probe into Z's weapons smuggling, then denied to Congress that his brother was on Z's advisory board.
I specifically asked him, I do not believe it is true that he is a member of the advisory board. During the break, I did contact my brother. I reached him at home. He is not at the hotel, but I learned that he had been at the advisory board meeting yesterday. I had not been aware of that, and I want to state on the record right now that I hereby recuse myself from any matters having to do with Blackwater.
Coalition Chief Paul Bremer, another Council for National Policy veteran, once said, I cannot succeed in this mission without the help of God. But he also needed Blackwater. He gave Prince his first big contract in Iraq. Bremer later wrote the Bremer Order granting contractors in Iraq total legal immunity, and Z would need it. Quoting John Doe No. 2's sworn declaration, Mr. Prince operated his companies in a manner that encouraged and rewarded the destruction of Iraqi life. For example, Mr. Prince's executives would openly speak about going over to lay Hajis out on cardboard. Going to Iraq to shoot and kill Iraqis was viewed as a sport or a game.
But love your enemies, and do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful.
A man whom Z called a disgruntled former employee put it this way.
Troubling when a group of Americans who are supposedly there to help in the rebuilding of a country consider those people to be less than they are, less human than they are.
But is there any evidence that these attitudes reached the battlefield? We've told you that Prince sent his men illegal ammo engineered to detonate on contact with human flesh. Out of 3 State Department security contractors, Z fired first in its shootouts, more than any other, firing first or being the only side to fire in 84% of shooting incidents. July 1st, 2007, Z shooters allegedly opened up on a minibus, taking 3 families to the airport. Dead, 1 9-year-old boy, his father, his uncle, his mother, trying to shield her 3-month-old daughter. The baby is also dead, shot in the face. February 7, 2007, Z snipers kill 3 Iraqi government security guards. Iraqi officials confront the shooters, who then joke about it. The State Department defends Z without, according to the Washington Post reporting, interviewing witnesses nor examining the scene. Christmas Eve 2006, a drunken Blackwater employee kills an Iraqi vice president's bodyguard. CNN reports the State Department kept this out of the killer's personnel records. February 16, 2005, Z sprays an Iraqi car with more than 70 bullets, presumably killing the driver. The Z security detail is codenamed Templar 20. The State Department determined Z lied about being fired on, but punishes nobody. Quote, any disciplinary actions would be deemed as lowering the morale of contractors. Out of 195 shootings from 2005 to 2007, Z was fired upon first just 32 times. Z has denied wrongdoing and will reply in court to the allegations, the legal allegations against it, later this month. Today, a judge ruled on Z's request for a gag order. Gag order denied.
The pre-tribulation rapture theory originated with 2 Jesuit priests, Francisco Ribera and Emmanuel Lucanza. It was later reintroduced by Theosophist Freemason John Darby and the cult group Plymouth Brethren. The pre-trib rapture theory was adopted by Freemason Cyrus Schofield, who was not a theologian but placed the theory into his study Bible to train pastors and leaders of our generation. His footnotes have led Christians to believe that we must support Israel unconditionally for a blessing. With no thanks to Tim LaHaye, CNP, the rapture has set the stage for the coming of the counterfeit Jesus, the Maitreya. Since the Christian world is so tightly networked by change agents of the enemy, it is unlikely that the truth will squeak out, or warnings will ever be heard when the events begin to take place. Constant Cumby's book reveals that the Freemason Pat Robertson's CNP stated major goal of the CBN is to work for the establishment of Jesus Christ's kingdom here on earth. Never knew that. CBN supporters have been urged to support its television station in the Middle East because it is the station that will televise Jesus Christ's return to earth. Freedom Council members have been asked to pray for the station's safety for that same reason. And when people are told that when the Bible says every eye shall see him, it means on television, as Robertson has, for the record, surely must be set straight. But the Bible also says, "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trump of God." Thessalonians 4:16. This is to be heard by everyone, not just those who are watching TV. And here's George Bush's father, the late Senator Prescott Bush. Was a director and shareholder of companies that profited from their involvement with the financial backers of Nazi Germany. He helped Hitler rise to power. Yes, he did. Conclusion. Propaganda and lies have been created to protect an underground Nazi fascist movement. This strategy for revolution was successfully used by Nazi Germany to rise to power, and it is working again today. The modern movement has used the shelter of the politically active Christian to further their dark agenda. Just as the title of Christianity is now being borrowed by the cults, the title of Christian fundamentalism has also been borrowed by the political elite to masquerade as Christians. Those in Washington, D.C. who claim to be Christian and right-wing are the furthest thing from it. The fakes are being thrown into the same batch with the real deal. The real deal are those who want to live a quiet life in obedience to the Scriptures and who desire a closer walk with the Lord Jesus Christ. There is no overthrowing governments in the walk with Jesus Christ. Amen. Downward stars of the Republican National Convention logo. Nazism, neoconservatism, the New Age, and Dominionism are all one and the same, each having a different purpose in the overall plan. They all have been touched by the ancient mystery religions of Babylon and all use similar terminology. Not everyone who is a part of these groups realizes what they are involved in. The Bible says that the latter-day deception will deceive even the elect. Believers have been manipulated by tactics of the enemy, which have been brought through and applied over several generations. The Christian industrial complex is far broader than first imagined. Their takeover of the seven mountains of dominionism is very close. Are the Democrats exempt from this? Do they come out smelling like a rose? No, because they peddle their own brand of ism. Be it Marxist, socialism, or communism, either way, the global elite will gain control by using the Hegelian dialectic, and they will succeed at their plan for global oneness. Maitreya, who will likely be the Antichrist, will inspire humanity to see itself as one family and create a civilization based on sharing, economic and social justice, and global cooperation. He will launch a call to action to save the millions of people who starve to death every year in a world of plenty. Among Maitreya's recommendations will be a shift in social priorities so that adequate food, housing, clothing, education, and medical care become universal rights. Under Maitreya's inspiration, humanity itself will make all the required changes and create a saner and more just world for all. At least they are led to believe that.
What you're seeing and will see when you see Maitreya is a body which he has created himself. It allows him to live at our level as an apparently ordinary man. He's about 6'3" and young, well-made, beautiful, and can change his appearance into the most hideous, grotesque individual that you could ever imagine. He can do this at will, and does it at will, and manifests himself to hundreds of the people who work with me all over the world. Because this work is worldwide. Share International is worldwide.
His intentions are definitely a new world, a global unity, universal inclusivism, global tolerance, global religion, global everything. Hence his title, World Teacher. Today's global anarchy is designed to make the populace frantic for that figure who will rise to bring about the New World Order into a new world oneness. When he comes, there will be such awe and wonder that people will begin worshiping him for his many wonders and answers to their problems. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Isaiah 14:12-15. In closing, true Christians have been made to look foolish by the media, and in other regards made to appear like they are part of an evil plan. Christians have been fooled into taking part of the Christian right, which has made them a pawn in the Illuminati plot. I would like to say that there is no segment of the American population more gentle and law-abiding than a true Christian. They don't mug or kill anyone, including foreign tourists, Muslims, or homosexuals. There has never been an incident of a drive-by shooting caused by a Christian, and the streets aren't filled with rioting fundamentalists. Hopefully the sheeple will wake up from their slumber so they don't support the enemy of their soul.
Run.
There's just one name that can keep